All right. Well, good afternoon and welcome, everybody. Thank you for attending our virtual wellness webinar on living well during and after breast cancer. My name is Dana Haley. I'm the research program coordinator for the Jacoby Center for Breast Health here at Mayo Clinic in Florida. Today, Dr. Dawn Musalem will teach you about breast cancer nutrition. You'll be learning about exercise during and after breast cancer from Beth Boyer, and I'll spend a few minutes chatting with you about mindfulness. I think I can say on behalf of the other two ladies here, we are so happy that you joined us. We're honestly super honored that you would share a couple hours of your afternoon with us, and just excited for this opportunity to provide you with some valuable tools and resources to help you thrive through your journey. We're also very grateful for advances in technology. We actually have viewers tuning in from 18 states and 4 countries today. So we're grateful to have this opportunity to expand our reach on this virtual platform and meet you right where you are. So before we get started, we'd like to take a quick moment for a little housekeeping. As you probably noticed as you were logging in, the webinar is being recorded. We do plan to post it on Mayo Clinic's YouTube page. It'll probably take about a week or so after the event before we can generate the link. Just to let you know, we did try to record our last one. We had some kind of glitch with the recording and only a few minutes of the presentation recorded. So hopefully we will not have that same issue again. Sometimes you just have to throw in the towel when it comes to technology. Everyone is muted by default. We do welcome your questions throughout the webinar. You can use the Q&A box to send us your questions, and then at the very end, we'll have a Q&A session so we can answer those questions. And many of the slides you'll be seeing will have links to multiple wellness resources, and we want to make sure that we get those in your hands. So we'll be sending out a list of all of those resources to everyone who's attending just a couple days after the webinar. And as long as the recording does happen, we'll also send you a link to the YouTube recording of this. And finally, because this is a webinar, we're about to spend the next few hours pouring out a lot of information to you. So please feel free to get up, stretch, or get a snack or drink if you need to. We'll continue with our presentation. You can come back and join us whenever you're ready. All right, so just a little background on our presenters before we get started. Dr. Musalem has been at Mayo Clinic since 2004 and transitioned from the hospital practice to the Jacoby Center for Breast Health about 6 years ago. Her passion in life is to apply lifestyle medicine to help breast cancer patients discover transformative well-being during and after breast cancer. And I'll tell you, she doesn't just believe in this, she lives this. She is a 21-year stage 4 non-Hodgkin's cancer survivor. So she's really experienced cancer as a teacher of life. She's energized to be able to help breast cancer patients live their best life ever, guided by the highest quality, up-to-date medical evidence available. And Beth Boyer is a physician's assistant in the Jacoby Center for Breast Health. She's worked in cancer care since she became a PA in 2011. And has been at Mayo Clinic here in Florida since January of 2015, and specifically came here to work with our breast cancer program because it's near and dear to her heart. Her inspiration is her mother, who ended her battle with metastatic breast cancer in 2011. And Beth wants to give patients information and tools to empower them to have a successful journey, whether that's for prevention or treatment or survivorship. And she definitely puts into practice the things that she teaches as well. And as I said at the beginning, my name's Dana Haley. I'm the research program coordinator here at the Breast Center. And basically what that means, I try to get more clinical trials and research opportunities approved and made available to our patients. I've been in this role for a little over 2.5 years and have been at Mayo for 16 years now. I was previously working as a clinical research coordinator in dementia studies. And I'll be honest, I'm just really humbled to have the opportunity to work in research, especially breast cancer research, because I have a strong family history of it. And also honored to have the opportunity to bring new therapies and treatment options to our patients. So with that, I'll let Dr. Musalem take it away.
Thank you, Dana, for the lovely introduction. And everyone, we welcome you. We're so happy you're here to join us. And we have from multiple states as well as a few other countries joining us today. So welcome. Thank you for making the commitment to your wellness. We always know that those of you tuning in are those patients who are most motivated to live healthy lives, because the first part of this is taking the step in the right direction and listening and joining in on these sorts of webinars. So we're really happy you're here. We offer these webinars a few times a year. So however you saw this invitation, if it was on social media, you should see it again via social media links, or if we sent you the invitation directly through Mayo, you should be able to access these in the future as well. We always offer one in October, so keep that in mind for Breast Cancer Month. If you haven't received an invitation, ask your medical team. If you're a Mayo Clinic patient, we'll be sure you get an invitation. We usually do one sometime in the summer too. There is going to be a lot of information, like Dana said, so I always share with patients, if you have your cell phone with you, or if you're just on your cell phone watching the webinar, you can take a screenshot of the slide that has some of that information you're really interested in. And we will be taping today's video, so you'll be able to get some of that information back. And I have a lot of links in my slides with some great patient information, and so we'll get those to you. So let's get started. Just so everyone knows, these slides were updated all the way up until this morning. So after we get off of this meeting, there's a chance that things could continue to evolve and update with more great information. And so, you know, we always want folks to know that this information is continually being updated, and we always update this presentation. But what you hear today may continue to evolve and change as months and years move on, just to give us more information. Always talk with your medical doctor before making any changes, especially if those changes included things like your medications or supplements, or even sometimes when making major lifestyle changes. Make sure your personal doctor is okay with that before you do that. And so, like Dana said, you know, my own personal journey, your journey, this is a catalyst to become the best version of you. And so I sometimes feel that cancer, at least for me, it was certainly a teacher of life, and it taught me how to live my best life possible in terms of enjoying every second and living every moment in a way to give back to our life. And part of that has to do with eating in a way that nurtures us. And so nutrition in breast cancer is something that I'm super excited about. It's interesting, I was very excited about this as a little girl. And so my entire life, I have really dedicated a lot of interest and research into the needs of how to optimize nutrition in the fight against cancer. So let's look at this picture. And I've used this picture on all my slides, and I will continue to use it until I can be creative enough to think of a different figure. And if any of you have suggestions, feel free to send it my way, because I would love to be a little more original. Because Dr. Dean Ornish, who is actually the father of lifestyle medicine, is the one that came up with a very similar picture. And so what this is take a look. The faucet is on, the drain is plugged, and water is going all over the floor. So it's flooding. And in medicine, what do? We're really quick to mop up the floor. And this is important because this is how we cure, or this is how we treat our breast cancer. And in many ways, we cure breast cancer nowadays. So this is our surgery, our chemotherapy, our radiation, our anti-estrogen drugs, our targeted HER2 therapies, immunotherapy, vaccine trials. I mean, gosh, this list is going on and on. It's getting so big, and we are doing so good at treating patients. But if we don't help people live healthier after a cancer diagnosis, the cancer is a higher risk of coming back and having recurrence. More critical diseases can develop, things like heart disease, diabetes, strokes, obesity. So we want to avoid that. And adverse sequelae to treatment can occur. We know when people take better care of themselves during and after treatment, they have less side effects during treatment and less late effects of treatment as well. So we're going to use the American Institute for Cancer Research recommendations for cancer prevention. And if you look at this arrow, we see here that these same recommendations that help us prevent cancer are the same recommendations that cancer survivors can use to help reduce the risk of recurrence, like we just mentioned, and also help to reduce the risk of secondary cancers. So this is very, very important. Rather than me read through each one of these recommendations, we're going to talk about them individually during our talk today. And so the first part I just want to mention is we want folks to be a healthy weight. That's not as easy as it always is easy to say, right? And especially after having a diagnosis of breast cancer, you know, you get a diagnosis of cancer and your loved ones and family members, they automatically are envisioning you losing weight. So a lot of times our family tends to bring us foods that are going to kind of fatten us up. And we kind of have a tendency to eat to our cravings because we're maybe a little bit down, especially in the beginning. And so we kind of lose a little bit of our vision on the importance of eating a low-fat, healthy diet. But the important thing here is to avoid weight gain and maintain a healthy weight. But that is so challenging. And in fact, more than 50% of all women who undergo chemotherapy for early stage breast cancer do experience weight gains in fat mass in the visceral areas too. That means sometimes fat that we don't even see, that may even protect the organs. And they have a reduction in lean mass. So they have a reduction in muscle, and in some cases, reductions in their bones. A lot of the bone loss has to do with treatment that we're giving women when it comes to the anti-estrogen therapy. And so Beth is going to talk to you a great deal about the exercise, which can help to maintain and build muscle mass and to reduce the loss of the bone. The problem is only about 10% of women, when they have this breast cancer related weight gain, are able to lose that weight. And we know that the women's interventional nutrition study showed that just losing a mere 6 pounds after gaining weight from breast cancer can improve breast cancer outcomes. And so that kind of leads us to the next part of this discussion, nutrition. 80% of weight loss is nutrition. Exercise is really important for maintaining weight, but when it comes to weight loss, we really need to turn our vision to that in nutrition. And so with the American Institute for Cancer Research guidelines, the majority of the recommendations have to do with a whole food, plant predominant diet that is low in fat. And so that's what we're going to talk about for about the next 30 to 45 minutes. So here's a question for you. And I know that we're not able to hear your voices, and that's the only downside of doing these webinars, but we generally have so many women on these webinars, there would be no way to hear all your voices. And so we're sorry for that. But I want you to think to yourself, are you more to the left of the screen? Or are you more to the right of the screen? And when it comes to eating patterns, it really exists along a spectrum. And so which one are you? At one end of the spectrum on the right is what we call the standard American diet. And this is the diet that's filled with ultra processed foods, fast foods, fried foods, sweet, sugary foods, refined grains, things like cookies and cakes and white bread and sugary sodas. And then if we looked at the left side of the screen, this is going to be the disease fighting or disease preventing or disease treating type of a diet. This one on the left side of the screen is going to be our whole food plant-based diet. And we know that this is the type of diet that gives us lots of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants and phytochemicals that can help to fight cancer. And so the first doctor over 3,500 years ago, Hippocrates, knew just this. He knew that there was like a symphony of goodness when it came to plants. And basically he said, let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food, that is what we need to turn to. And that is becoming more and more important. Again, we're getting back to the foundation of where we started. And so this is a great study, and this is actually a prevention study. And what the study looked at is had almost 50,000 women. This was the Women's Health Initiative Dietary Modification Study. And they showed in women who were on a regular standard American diet, so that one I just showed you on the right hand of the screen, when they were invited to reduce the fat of their diet to 20% or less, and they did that for 8.5 years, and they were given instructions over those 8.5 years to eat that low-fat diet. They continued to follow these women, and after 19.6 years, they saw that there was a 21% risk reduction of breast cancer occurring. And what was really, really interesting is there was actually a reduction in the most aggressive sort of breast cancer. So I know this is a prevention study. This isn't necessarily a survivorship study, but it does illuminate the benefit of a low-fat diet in preventing breast cancer, improving survival after a breast cancer diagnosis. And when it comes to that prevention of breast cancer, we're preventing the most aggressive types of breast cancer we're starting to see in this sort of a study, which is very exciting. But again, showing that we're improving survival is the reason I share this study. And it's a good segue into this survivorship study that has to do with the Nurses' Health Study. And both of these studies were published over the last 1 and 2 years. So very recent data that has been generated. So it's very exciting to talk on recent data. And this particular study was published here in August of this past year, 2021. So in this Nurses' Health Study, they looked at 9 specific components of this diet. And what they wanted to see is the women who followed this diet the closest, how much of an impact did that have on their breast cancer outcomes? And so what those components were high fiber, things like coffee and nuts were seen to be favorable, whole fruit was favorable, polyunsaturated fat was favorable. So things with omega-3 fatty acids, so fatty fish, avocados, and nuts, like I mentioned just a few moments ago. The things that they wanted to avoid in this diet were things that were high in glycemic index. So things like white rice and white bread were not a good thing, right? Those are refined things, things like cookies and cake, not good. They wanted folks to avoid fruit juice and sugar-sweetened beverages, red meat, and of course, like we said earlier, trans fat. After these breast cancer survivors were followed for 16 years, what they saw is there was a 33% overall survival benefit and a 17% breast cancer specific survival benefit. Now, the thing I really liked most about this study is for women who originally ate a standard American diet. They didn't eat healthy their whole life. They got their breast cancer diagnosis and they wanted to make change. So there may be some of you on this call today that are like that. Those women who made the change and continued to eat healthy for 16 years after their breast cancer diagnosis had a 23% improved breast cancer specific outcome. That is so exciting. So the bottom line here is it's never too late to make a change. So I want you to be really encouraged by this study. And I just thought it was such a fantastic study. Now, these awesome researchers are actually from Harvard, and they went in to look at the highest amount of vegetable and fruit consumption in breast cancer survivors in the same group of patients, the Nurses' Health Study. This study had about 9,000 women. They followed them for 12 years, as long as 30 years after the diagnosis. And they showed us something that's kind of common sense. Those women who ate more vegetables and fruits had a lower risk of dying from any cause. And that improvement was about an 18% survival benefit. But what they did show, again, is that fruit juice was associated with a poorer prognosis after a cancer diagnosis. And again, it's because it's that simple sugar. So that can contribute to weight gain, that can contribute to increases in insulin. So we want to avoid fruit juice. We want to eat the whole fruit, okay? In this same study, they went in and they kind of highlighted certain vegetables and fruits that really stood out as superstars. So maybe we'll call them superfoods, if you may. And I want to, before I go into that, back up to the basics and kind of go back to Hippocrates, saying that it's really this overall symphony of what we eat and this pattern of a very colorful diet that matters most. So I'm going to highlight these few things, but we still want to get a really colorful diet. And one of my good friends, I've never been really too big on social media, but I'm trying to get a little bit more involved because it's really fun, especially when we have colleagues from other big, large academic medical centers. And so we tend to all share some of what we're doing because most of us in this lifestyle medicine arena tend to eat really healthy and exercise and do good, healthy things in our own lifestyle. So we like to share that with patients. So one of my friends said what she was doing is she was going to start eating at least 30 different types of vegetables and fruits every single week. So she put me to the challenge. So this past week, I went to the grocery store and I thought, what vegetable should I buy that I haven't bought in a long time? So I bought fennel, fresh fennel, and I put it in stir-fried vegetables and it was delicious. So I'm going to throw these little things in. I like it to have fun as we talk. So think about that. You don't have to necessarily do 30. If you typically only limit your vegetable and fruit consumption currently to maybe 3 or 4 things, maybe you should start trying to get 8 different types of vegetables and fruits. Don't start too big, start with a reasonable goal. But think about that every time you go to the store. So each time you go to the store, I want you to try a different vegetable or fruit that you've never tried before, or one you haven't had in a really long time. And it makes it really fun. So I better get back to my job, right? So what did they find with these foods? So this part showed us that 2 cups of green leafy vegetables in these breast cancer survivors improved overall survival by 20%. We saw with cruciferous vegetables, 1 serving of cruciferous vegetables a day improved overall survival by 13%. And there has been many research studies that have shown cruciferous vegetables are very favorable when it comes to breast cancer. There are certain sulfur-containing compounds in cruciferous vegetables that have a real big power punch against cancer. And so we really want to encourage cruciferous vegetables. And I like to encourage my patients to try to get 2 cups of green leafy vegetables each day and try to get at least 1 serving of cruciferous vegetables each day to the best of your ability. Now I have a list here of some of the most common cruciferous vegetables. You can, of course, go to Google and search this and find a big variety of vegetables, but think of different ways that you can enjoy cabbage or cauliflower, Brussels sprouts that maybe you roast with some balsamic vinegar on it, broccoli, arugula, kale. You can do bok choy that's in a stir fry, or even radishes. But think about the different variety of cruciferous vegetables that you can enjoy, but try to get cruciferous vegetables at least 1 serving or more a day, okay? So what about carotenoids? Again, we want to really aim for that colorful diet. And so the American Institute for Cancer Research has shown that there is some evolving evidence that suggests that women who have the highest carotenoid levels actually have a reduced risk of those estrogen receptor negative or those more aggressive types of breast cancers. The Nurses' Health Study previously has shown that women also with those higher versus the lower carotenoid levels have a lower breast cancer risk, between 18 to 28% lower. So we just want to make sure that patients understand, though, and the real point of this slide is to show that you can't replace a food for a supplement. And this particular reason is why there have been studies to show in patients that take beta carotene as a supplement that it's associated with an increased mortality, when you take it as a supplement. So food is where the best balance of these nutrients comes from. So don't be quick to go to a supplement. We want to try to get all of these vitamins, nutrients, minerals, and phytochemicals from our food, not from a pill. Okay, so try to get carotenoids. I also use this slide as a good segue, not to forget about foods like sweet potatoes and squash, especially this time of year. Sweet potatoes can be a great breakfast. They can be a great snack. You can make different soups with squash and pumpkin. So keep those foods in mind. Berries. So this is an exciting study in breast cancer survivors. Again, looking back at that Nurses Health study, what they showed was just a simple 2 servings of berries a week improved breast cancer specific survival by 25%. So come on, that is so easy to do. So that's part of your homework after this visit, is to really aim at getting berries. Let's not just do it 2 days a week. Let's try to do it every day. And this is such an easy thing you can do. I just buy my berries frozen. So no, when it comes to fruit, you can do it fresh, you can do it frozen, or you can even do it dried. The only thing that I say is off limits, they don't want you doing it canned. There was actually one study that showed that canned fruit actually wasn't favorable for patients. So, you know, we need more information before we can make such broad statements, but we do know that fresh fruit, frozen fruit, and dried fruit is the way to go. When you buy dried fruit, though, just one thing, try to find the dried fruit that doesn't have the sulfur dioxide in it. Try to make sure the dried fruit doesn't have added sugar in it. So make sure you flip over the label and make sure there's no added sulfur dioxide or added sugar, okay? So with the berries, again, feel free just to go ahead and buy those frozen and enjoy those. And this study also showed benefit with other berries as well, including strawberries. So you can enjoy strawberries and also feel free to enjoy raspberries and blackberries. This isn't to discount the value of fresh. It's just this time of year, especially, it's pretty hard to find good fresh berries. So enjoy them frozen. So with that being said, a lot of folks, next question for me, if I had an appointment with you and you were able to talk, is, well, should I buy them organic? So what I say is, if you want to buy wild berries do not need to be organic, because the mere fact that they're wild means that they're not spraying them with pesticides. So wild berries don't need to be organic, but all the other berries, you're probably better to try to find them organic, especially if we're talking about strawberries. So the Environmental Working Group publishes this list each year. And of course, now that we're just into 2022, I don't have the updated list quite yet, but it should be coming out soon. So here's 2021's list. You can screenshot this, or you can go to the website yourself and find this exact image with this list right here. Their image is going to be a little different, of course, maybe not with the same picture, but you'll see the same list. So this is called the Environmental Working Group's Dirty Dozen list. So the dirtiest 12 vegetables and fruits that you want to try to buy organic if you have access to it. But if you don't have access to it, then it's always better to just buy the vegetable and don't worry that it's not organic. If you're traveling and you don't have access to organic produce, don't worry about it. You're better to have the conventional vegetable or fruit, so you get those vegetables and fruits. There is not enough research to yet validate the benefit of conventional versus organic. We need more research before we can make those conclusions, but it still makes a lot of patients feel better knowing that they're not getting unnecessary chemicals in their body if at all possible. So enjoy this list. These items are nice here though, because this is the Clean 15 list. So this tells us that these vegetables and fruits really aren't a problem if you buy them without being organic. So here's a list here of the ones that you don't need to buy organic, because they're pretty clean in the way that they come anyways, okay? So what about eggs? I didn't used to have this slide in until this year, but it's a common question I get, so I like to bring this up for patients. You know, there's never been a human study that's shown consistently that eggs increase breast cancer risk, but when we look at a meta-analyses, that's a high quality meta-analyses. They show that women who may have the most eggs when they start to eat, excuse me, more than 5 to 9 eggs a week, that there may be an increased slight risk of breast cancer occurring. I don't have any breast cancer survivorship data for you. We do know that eggs have higher levels of insulin growth factor 1. They have higher levels of cholesterol. They have higher levels of arachidonic acid, which is pro-inflammatory. So I think the bottom line would be is, since there is some cholesterol in these and some fat when it comes to the yolk, maybe try to limit your eggs to less than 4 a week if at all possible. Most people I talk to aren't doing more than 4 eggs anyways. If you're an egg eater, you have a few eggs every day, and what I would say is maybe try to cut it back by a few eggs each week, or if you do 2 eggs every morning for breakfast, maybe do 1 whole egg and then do the other one as just a white, so you don't get quite as much cholesterol. I wish I had more concrete evidence to guide patients. The overall theme is that we really don't see that there's an increased cardiovascular mortality with egg consumption. But again, because when it comes to breast cancer data, we know that low fat diets and as well as low cholesterol diets seem to matter. I would rather my patients tend to err on the more conservative side and moderate approach when it comes to egg consumption. The biggest message here I want you to hear is that if you fry eggs at a really high temperature, especially in oil, it's going to cause carcinogenic compounds called polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And we definitely want to avoid that. So that really makes all this research very complicated, because when we do these studies on eggs and people, we really don't know how they're always cooking them. So it's very hard research to convey to our patients, and it makes us just as confused. So I think moderation is a key when it comes to eggs, keeping in mind that the egg white wouldn't have any fat. It's the egg yolk that has the fat. So what about milk? So it's just a single slide that stands all by itself. The take-home message here with milk is going to be, I really want you to avoid high-fat milk. So that would be whole milk, 2% milk, and really 1% in skim too. There's still quite a substantial amount of fat in that. So if you're going to drink milk, make sure it's fat-free milk. In the Life After Cancer epidemiologic study, it did show increased breast cancer-related deaths, as well as all-cause related mortality with that of high-fat dairy consumption. So if you enjoy yogurt, make sure you switch that to fat-free. If you enjoy cheese, try to select the more low-fat or fat-free varieties of those as well. Since we just mentioned yogurt, when you buy yogurt, also look at the label, making sure that there's no artificial sweeteners, making sure that there's no added sugar. Probably your best bet with yogurt is to buy plain yogurt and then add the fruit to it, so you don't have to contend with any of those artificial sweeteners or added sugar to your yogurt. A lot of people are worried about dairy and they want to avoid it. And I'm totally supportive if you want to avoid dairy. But I would have some colleagues that may say, yeah, but your patient needs some calcium. And that's a nutritional myth. There are many ways that you can get calcium from plant sources. And so here is a really nice resource for you. And this is one of the links that we're going to share with you. So this is a website you can go to, and it would be at www.connect.lifestylemedicine.org. And these are free resources for patients that you'll really find valuable. And so you'll see here many ways that you can get calcium that would be from a plant source. So things like plant milks, almond milk, soy milk are going to give you actually more calcium in most cases than your milk has. Your green leafy vegetables, your broccoli, your soybeans, that's going to be another way of having lots of calcium. And here's another slide for your interest. So you can see that lots of vegetables, fruits, oranges, tahini, tomatoes, quinoa, chickpeas. There's so many ways of getting calcium. Calcium is one of those things that are very important, though, in our breast cancer survivors, especially when it comes to bone health. So I encourage my patients at the start of having any transition in their diet, and maybe even a few times a year, doing a food log, where you calculate out how much calcium you're getting in your diet for maybe a day or two. Trying to aim for 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day is the goal, but most people really struggle to get that much calcium. So if you're only getting about 600 milligrams of calcium from your diet, then you would want to get the remaining 600 milligrams from a calcium supplement. This is something you can talk about to your doctor, but the recommendation here is 1,200 milligrams of calcium a day, combined food and supplement. Always aiming to get it from your food, but if you don't quite meet that target, you may need a little bit of a supplement. I prefer for my patients to get calcium citrate. Seems to be a little bit more absorbable for patients, so keep that in mind too when it comes to purchasing your calcium supplement. So when it comes to red and processed meat is a carcinogen, and red meat is probably a carcinogen when it comes to colon cancer. There are several breast cancer studies that have suggested that there is an increased breast cancer risk, but more research is needed before I would make that definite conclusion. So when it comes to processed meat, if someone was to say, have example, 2 slices of bacon or 2 pieces of ham, so about 50 grams, which is going to be about 1.67 ounces of processed meat a day, that's going to increase the risk of colon cancer by 18%. If someone is going to have red meat every day, and let's say they're having about 3, almost 4 ounces a day, about a little bit over that 3 ounces, 100 grams, let's say, but we don't really work in grams too well in the United States, so I try to give a little bit of equivalent. If they're having that amount of red meat every day, it's going to increase colon cancer by about 17%. So we feel that the red meat is probably a carcinogen. We also know that the meats tend to be not as good for the gut microbiome. So I make it something that's pretty much across the board with most of the patients I see is let's really try to limit our red meat. And let's definitely avoid our processed meat. Processed meat is a carcinogen, just like cigarettes. So there's no reason that I would want to say it's okay for you to have it. So let's avoid that processed meat if at all possible. And so folks say, what about Christmas or my birthday or my anniversary? So I know if it's a celebratory event or occasion and it's like you have a quiche, say at Christmas with some sausage in it or whatever it may be, you'll have to make that decision for yourself. A lot of times patients are willing to just switch over and try to eat totally healthy and avoiding those foods that would be under that category of a carcinogen. But if it's something meaningful to you, then we shouldn't make it stressful. We should just really encourage that it's definitely in moderation and something you try to avoid more than less. So what about grilling meats? So when you grill meats, just like if you cook an egg at a really high temperature and fry it, it's going to cause these carcinogenic compounds. And we know that that high intake of that grilled or barbecued meat is linked to worse breast cancer outcomes. And that risk can be about a 23% increased risk. So try to avoid those charred meats cooked at a really high temperature. To try to avoid some of these carcinogenic compounds, marinating meat can be a way to help to overcome that. Cooking the meat off the center of the grill and trying to cook at a higher rack at a lower temperature. So keep that in mind. And what about fish? Fish is a great option to try to replace some of that red meat. So fish always gets a thumbs up because we're generally replacing red meat when we're eating fish. Here was a nice study, a small study, but a nice study that kind of shows us a little bit of that benefit. These are observational studies, so we definitely need more studies to really prove this, but it's always fun to see there is some research that shows that the fish seems to be very healthy for patients, and we know that from many, many other health diseases as well. So in this study, 3,000 women after their breast cancer diagnosis were followed for 7 years, and they showed those that had the highest amount of dietary fish fatty acids had a 25% reduced risk of breast cancer recurrence and improved survival. So when it comes to fish, your fish selection actually does matter because you don't want to eat fish that are high in mercury. So you want to eat fish that are low in mercury and have these good fatty acids. So things like wild salmon are great. Think about buying wild salmon in the can. You can get wild sockeye salmon. You can keep it in your cabinet and use it whenever it's that time of the week that you want to kind of have an option to not eat red meat and eat fish. And you can just simply use the can of salmon and put it on a bed of lettuce and whatever you would enjoy with that. Other things would be something as simple as sardines, mussels, rainbow trout, Atlantic mackerel. The things you want to avoid are the things to the right of the screen. So king mackerel, marlin, swordfish, shark, tilefish. I had a woman who was enjoying barracuda, which is really high in mercury. So you want to avoid these high mercury fish. Tuna is one that tends to be higher in mercury. So if a patient is really enjoying tuna and she gives me her diet recall and she's doing it a few times a week, I typically say no more than 1 serving of tuna a week. And you can look at this environmental working group. This is the same group of folks who did that publication about the organic produce that you should buy organic and the ones you don't need to be organic. So you can do a little fish calculator with them and they can guide you towards how much fish would be a safe amount of fish in a week period of time, being certain that you don't get mercury that we wouldn't want you to have, okay? So keep that in mind. Unfortunately, our fish supply isn't as healthy as it used to be. Try to do wild fish. Farm fish just are fed food that is really not what a fish should be fed. And the conditions that some fish are caught in are not very optimal because our water supply is not very clean. So it all of a sudden becomes very concerning if these fish are being exposed to different plastics and maybe even some estrogen containing compounds, believe it or not. So it's very concerning what has happened with our fish supply. So we want to be very particular when we guide patients on fish because in an effort to be healthy, we need to make sure we protect you in doing that right. Here is my favorite. This is my favorite slide, guys. Beans. They are so good for you. They are definitely linked to what we think is a reduced risk of breast cancer. They definitely help with maintaining and losing weight because you get all that fiber that helps to fill you up. The most exciting thing about beans is they're really good for your gut microbiome. What on earth am I talking about when I say gut microbiome? So your gut microbiome are all those organisms that are in your GI tract. The reason a lot of folks eat yogurt are for those organisms that are in the yogurt. So the problem is we got to make sure that we feed those organisms in our gut. And those organisms that are in our belly and in our GI tract, they love this sort of fiber and the nutrients that beans give them. So I really want folks to try to get beans at least once a day, if not 2 to 3 times a day. It's a great way to try to lose weight. I have folks ask me all the time, they say, yeah, I know you really want me to do this plant-based diet, but isn't that expensive? It's not. I mean, beans are so much less expensive than buying lunch meat or buying any meat of any sort. It's so easy because you can go shopping, once a month and stock up on your beans and you're taken care of. I'm fine if you want to do canned beans. When it comes to the BPA-free cans, I tend to kind of feel that's probably the direction I try to go if I have access to it, but I don't always have access to it. So when I don't have access to it, I make sure to rinse my beans really good. And I typically do that anyways. Try to buy your beans with low sodium or salt-free. And if you're going to cook beans the good old-fashioned way, that's wonderful. You would want to make sure you soak them overnight and then cook them accordingly. Okay, so let's really try to get those beans. What about soy? So this is where I definitely wish I could hear your voices, because generally folks are terrified to have soy after a breast cancer diagnosis, and that couldn't be farther from the truth. And in fact, the American Institute for Cancer Research has shown that there is some evidence to suggest that soy consumption after a breast cancer diagnosis may actually improve overall survival and reduce breast cancer recurrence. So why is this old message still out there that was conveyed wrong in the first place? I don't know. It's one of those myths that still exists. So here I am to dispel that myth, to say you're safe to have soy. The American Cancer Society and the American Institute for Cancer Research says you're safe to have 1 to 3 servings of whole soy products a day. So that would be things like tofu or edamame, like you see in this picture, the soybeans that are in the pod. You could do soy milk, you could do soy nuts, you could do tempeh. So trying to do more of the whole soy products, and not ones that would be like in a powder, like the soy isolate powder, okay? Though that soy isolate powder isn't gonna hurt you, it's likely not gonna give you the nutritional benefit that whole soy would give you, okay? So what about nuts? So nuts are excellent. And here's a study, again, that showed that regular nut consumption for 5-year survival among breast cancer patients showed that there was improved outcomes. So enjoy your nuts, but nuts are really nutrient dense, but they're also high in calories. So it's awesome that there's tons of nutrients, but we can't eat nuts unlimited. So what I typically say is enough nuts that would cover the palm of your hand once a day would be the limit. But because they're higher in calorie, in most situations, we need to be careful with that. Now, if you're a person who is struggling because you can't keep your weight on, that may be in a situation where we can give you the green light to have a little bit more nuts in that scenario. So here is just another resource that you'll be given in that handout. And this is just a head-to-head comparison of chicken versus fish versus cow meat, like a steak versus beans. And the thing here is that the things that are in red are the problem. So, here we see with the chicken that there's some cholesterol. Compared to beans, there's no issue with cholesterol. Here we have the salmon, and it's a little higher in fat, but some of that fat is a good fat. So I like that, but there's still some saturated fat there and cholesterol. And there's no fiber, unlike the fiber that we see in beans and the fact that there's no cholesterol in the beans. And we look at the beef and boy, it gets a bunch of strikes, right? So it has lots of fat, has saturated fat, has cholesterol, and of course has no fiber. The only way you're gonna get fiber is from plants. So you're only gonna get fiber from vegetables, fruits, beans, and nuts. You're never gonna get fiber when it comes to animal products. So these are fiber void products, all of which contain cholesterol, some of which contain fat, which can end up being very high unfavorable amounts of fat right here, okay? Here are ways when you're switching animal proteins to more plant proteins that you can see that you can get lots of protein from things like lentils, the soybeans, those edamames we just talked about that would be safe for you, black beans, there's nuts, peas, even potatoes. Your green leafy vegetables have protein. So there's a lot of protein in plant foods that people aren't even aware of. This will be another resource that we'll be sure you have access to. So I like this slide, and I moved it to after what I just discussed with you. I used to have this slide earlier in the discussion, but this slide really helps to explain how when we replace red meat with things like chicken or fish or beans or nuts, that we reduce the risk of breast cancer. So here's a study. They looked at adolescent girls who had the most versus the least red meat consumption. And what they showed is there was an increased risk of breast cancer in women who were at a younger age, premenopausal breast cancer. And by replacing one serving of the red meat with those various healthier choices, there was a reduction in both premenopausal breast cancer risk, as well as lower risk of breast cancer overall. So this is a really nice study to show when we replace that red meat, we have a reduction in that breast cancer risk. So I do like this slide. So what about whole grains? A lot of folks are really scared about whole grains, that this is how they're going to gain weight. But the message here is it needs to be whole grains, not refined grains. So again, things like brown rice or quinoa or whole grain bread, whole grain sprouted bread, those are going to be the things we want you to consider, not packaged foods that are going to be white flour, white pasta, white crackers. Those are the things we want to avoid. So we know that whole grains are an awesome way to get lots of vitamins, minerals, and fiber. Again, fiber is what I really want my patients to be aware of. We have a fiber deficiency in this country, and we have a fat excess in this country. People eat way too much fat and too much processed foods. And so with fiber, only about 3% of Americans get enough fiber. I want your fiber goal to be at least 35 grams a day, but let's really try to aim more for 40 to 45, especially if you're trying to lose weight, because this fiber is going to make you full. And in the process of eating fiber, it helps to even burn calories. It's very good for blood sugar regulation. It can help the hormonal effects, especially when we're talking about breast cancer, and it can help to bind carcinogens. And of course, we know that that fiber that you're getting from this whole grains is going to be good for that gut microbiome, which is going to help make the immune system good and strong as well. Okay. It sounds crazy. I mean, it sounds like, come on, can it really be that good for me? But it is. So remember whole foods, remember Hippocrates, our first doctor, food is medicine. So here it kind of goes through this, that not all carbohydrates are created equal. That's why carbohydrates are given this bad rap. If someone's doing steel cut oats or oatmeal versus someone's doing a bagel, those are both carbohydrates. But the oatmeal is going to give you so much benefit with the fiber, and it's not going to even have as much calories in it as is a plain bagel, which is going to be refined and really pretty void of fiber. So keep that in mind when we're looking at carbohydrates. We want those nutrient-dense carbohydrates, ones that are from a whole food and not as much of these processed foods like a bagel or a muffin or a piece of white bread. Here's some examples of ways you can switch out low fiber for higher fiber things. So get rid of the white bread and use the whole grain bread. So what I typically share with my patients is when you're buying bread, try to make sure it has at least 3 grams of carbohydrates. 3 grams of fiber in it, okay? So we want 3 grams of fiber. That will fall within the carbohydrate section on that label. So I really want you to turn your attention to the labels when you go to the store. No white rice, instead we're gonna do brown rice. When you get pasta, think about buying pasta, that some of these bean pastas. There's tons of chickpea pastas out there now. There's even some black bean pastas, some edamame pastas. So experiment with some of those and see if you like it. Try to get some of even the oat groats, which are kind of the whole form of oats, instead of even plain oatmeal. Either option is really, really good for you, but just for variety, you can try oat groats. And think of, instead of cornflakes, getting things like bran cereal. Don't forget about air pop popcorn, which will give you a lot of fiber. And so there are some options for you for some good high fiber carbohydrate swaps. Water should be your beverage of choice. What about coffee? So here is a study, again, observational study, but this is a fun one because most of my patients tell me they stopped coffee because they thought it was bad for them, and it's actually pretty good for you. So coffee, in this particular study, showed us that those women after their breast cancer that had the highest amount of coffee, greater than 3 cups a day, had a decreased breast cancer-related mortality. And again, we need more studies, but the point here is there hasn't been any studies that have shown us risk. So you can enjoy your coffee, but you need to think about, what am I putting in that coffee? Am I putting sugar in it? Am I putting whole fat creamer in it? So if you're putting sugar, you want to get rid of the sugar. If you're putting whole fat creamer, you'd want to switch that to fat-free, or even try some of the nut-based milks in it. I want you to be careful with some of the nut-based creamers and look at the label. A lot of times those nut-based creamers, the first ingredient is oil, and that's not a good thing. It's probably not much better than the fat from the milk. It's probably going to be a little bit better than the fat from the milk, but fat is fat, and I don't want you having that high fat for no reason at all. Okay, so check your coffee creamer labels out. If you're doing these plant coffee creamers, you may want to just switch to the plant milk, which would have less fat. And again, there's going to be a little bit of fat in soy milk because the soy has a little bit of fat in it. I'm not worried about that kind of a fat. I just don't want added oil into your soy or your nut-based coffee creamers. So just make sure there's no added oil. That's a take-home message there. Green tea has tons of laboratory studies. And in that particular study that looked at coffee, we've seen many studies where green tea actually beats the coffee. So green tea seems to be very favorable, but we do need more research for a conclusion on that. It seems that in the studies that show the benefit. It's typically in Asian populations. And we know that some benefit of food may have a genetic polymorphism, or, you were born to benefit from green tea, but I wasn't, or vice versa. We don't really know that yet. We'll learn that in our lifetime. And it's pretty exciting that we're going to be getting that research. But we do know that this laboratory data looks pretty darn exciting. So you can enjoy green tea. Here's another example of when you switch out that green tea for a supplement, you know what? We see a problem. We all of a sudden see when folks take green tea pills that there can be liver toxicity. Now, I have had one patient who drank a ton of green tea because she knew of this, suggested anti-cancer effect. And she was having 8 to 12 cups of green tea a day. And guess what? She was drinking so much green tea that she was getting so much of this polyphenol. It's called EGCG. Epogallocatechin gallate 3 is the big long word you may read in a research paper or even in some of these supplement ads. But she made her liver functions go up because she drank too much green tea, but she was having an extreme amount. So I typically say, 3 cups is probably all you would need if you're enjoying green tea. 5 would be the limit. Sugar sweetened sodas just are not good for you. Here's a study: 5 or more sugar sweetened sodas a week versus women who never had sugar sweetened sodas after their breast cancer diagnosis. Those that drank those 5 or more had a 62% increased all-cause mortality and an 85% increased breast cancer specific mortality. So get rid of the sodas. We don't want you to have sugar sweetened beverages, okay? So here is a nice diagram. Again, I'm going to share this resource with you when we send that email out to you of what your plate should look like when you're making food. So we want to really try to get 50% of that plate vegetables and fruits. We want a quarter of that plate to be your protein. And in this description here, we're really aiming for those plant-based proteins. And then the bottom quarter is going to be your whole grains. So keep that in mind when you're preparing your meals. This can be a nice way to try to make that transition. So with the plant protein part at that upper quarter, it may be hard to start. You may really like chicken, or it's kind of a main staple in your family right now, and that's what works good for your family. But one thing I invite folks to do is, rather than have 6 to 8 ounces of that meat, that's chicken or red meat, maybe cut it back to 2 to 4 ounces. Make a smaller serving size and add some beans to that protein so you can still get that fiber and fill up on the beans. And as time goes on, you may find that you eventually evolve the meat out of the picture and bring more beans into the picture. Don't forget about herbs and spices. Lots of phytonutrients and anti-cancer properties in various herbs and spices, and it can make food preparation very, very fun. This is probably quite hard for you to see, especially if you're viewing this webinar from a telephone. This is about the nutrient density and the calorie density of food. So when we talk about nutrient density, I want you eating foods that give you tons of nutrients. So you're getting antioxidants and anti-cancer properties and fiber. Those are the nutrients I want you getting. But I don't want you getting foods that are low in nutrient density and high in calories. So that's what this is showing us. These foods at the top of the list are going to be the lowest in calorie and the highest in nutrient density. And the ones at the bottom are going to be the highest in calorie, and they have no nutrient value whatsoever. So these things in green are what you essentially get pretty much a green light on. You can eat as much of these foods as you want to. I tell patients that the ones that have this green portion right here, where the green arrow is pointing, those are a 100% unlimited consumption. I'm not worried at all. Where this yellow is, or maybe some people, depending on their food tendencies and portion control, that we may have to back off just a little bit. So I individualize this person to person, but typically I don't have to put much limits on my patients when it comes to these foods. Oopsie daisy, I'm sorry. Because there's so much fiber in it, it's nearly impossible to get too full on these foods, but I do individualize that for folks, especially folks who are really motivated to lose weight. I still sometimes portion control some of this out. And the nuts and seeds we already talked about. That is a nutrient dense, which is awesome food, but it also has a lot of calories in it. So again, just about the palm of your hand or no more than 1/4 a cup or 1 serving a day would be my limit on those. And this is why this is a good way for us to understand what is she talking about: nutrient density and calorie density. So oil only takes up this much space in my stomach for 500 calories, okay? So it is a very high calorie, but there's no nutrients. So this is what it looks like in my belly, and my body's not going to feel very full when I eat it. We can look at cheese, it's going to fill up a little bit more, but same thing, lots of calories, and it's not really making me feel full. What about meat? Here we go. What about potatoes, beans, and rice? Ooh, we're doing better there, right? We're getting a little bit of fiber, but holy cow, if I'm trying to diet and I want to feel full and happy and satisfied and not like I'm restricting myself and dieting, look at this value we can get from vegetables and fruits while dieting. This is just awesome. So you feel full, you don't feel like you're sacrificing or restricting yourself when you do a whole food, plant predominant diet for dieting and for maintaining weight. So, you know, what I really want to encourage here is that I want you to enjoy the process. So sometimes the best way to start is talk with your family and just do it one day a week, you know? Give yourself some time to adjust to this idea, to kind of navigate through the grocery store and figure out what sorts of foods would be of interest to you. Give yourself time to be able to adapt when that time comes. With your recipes, it's really easy to switch meat out of recipes and put in beans for most recipes. There's so many wonderful resources now where you can find more plant predominant sorts of recipes. Look at labels, making sure that there's no added sugar and oils in those foods that you're buying that are prepared. Can be a good rule of thumb for trying to keep those things at the grocery store, not bringing them into your home. And explore all the different sorts of options out there and try to get a little more variety when it comes to vegetables and fruits. So I'm going to aim for 30 different vegetables and fruits each week. You figure out a number that seems reasonable for you, but get out of your comfort zone a little bit when it comes to that. I'm going to give you this awesome resource. And so a lot of those things that I went through where I kept on saying, I'm going to get this out to you and get this out to you. You can go online and you can find it yourself when you go to this link, but we'll also send you the link so you can find it. And what you'll do is you'll basically just go to the main section. You'll go to the 6 pillars in nutrition. And you're going to find this Food is Medicine handbook. And you're going to find in this handbook a way that you can make green smoothies that are really fun, how to make a filling salad, and it gives you some different options for these varieties. This next one is my favorite for my patients. So how to make simple and satisfying dressings without oil. So I think you'll really enjoy this slide or this particular part of that handbook. And this is my favorite because I love grain bowls. I don't know how many of you like grain bowls, but it can be so fun. And I am not super clever. And one of my dear patients is on this call right now. And I posted this webinar that it's not too late to register, join us. And she told me that I didn't put the link on there. And I thought, but I did. And she showed me how I could do a link. So what I'm sharing with you is I'm not that good on Instagram yet, but I'm trying to learn it. And so I try to post in my stories different recipes or different people that I see on Instagram that are doing a good job with good plant-based recipes. So feel free to follow me and follow my stories. And I try to post that stuff a few times a week. But the Nourish bowls or the grain bowls can be a really fun way of getting all those vegetables and fruits you need and grains you need and beans. You can put some seeds on top and spices. And they're really fun. Make them look pretty. Take a picture and you can start creating your own creative Facebook story. Show me the different vegetables and fruits that you're starting to experiment with and maybe tag me and be like, Dawn, look, I'm trying this and it was delicious. Or I tried this and I didn't like it. You're wrong. Let me know how you're doing. In the same handbook, there's menu samples of things that you can try. So I know that a lot of patients in the past have asked me about this. And I'm finishing up with my section. We're going to get it to Beth here in a moment. So with fasting, a lot of folks have heard about this. So I want to share this with you. This particular study showed in breast cancer survivors, those women that fasted 13 hours, so let's say it's 7 p.m. until 8 p.m. You can have water, you can have black coffee, you can have tea, just no sweetener. So a 13-hour overnight fast, you pick the hours. It doesn't have to be those hours. Those were just examples. But women who did this after a breast cancer diagnosis, who were followed for 7 years, had a reduced risk of breast cancer recurrence. They had reduced blood sugar and they even slept better. So think about fasting. It's something super easy that you can do. And so let's just set your SMART goals. I'm going to give you some homework. One is going to be more variety when you go to the grocery store, picking at least one vegetable or fruit you haven't had in a long time each week when you go to the store. The other thing we talked about is trying to have a half to 1 cup of berries at least twice a week for the next 4 weeks. And you're going to try to also reduce your red meat intake to no more than 2 to 4 ounces, maybe once a week for 8 weeks. See if that one would work for you. If that seems a little bit strict, let's not do that one if that's not right for you. But there's one I can throw out as maybe a suggestion. And you're going to try to increase your fiber intake and aim for about 40 grams a day for at least 5 days a week for the next 8 weeks starting tomorrow. Try that one. Let me know how that one goes. Dr. Greger has an app you can put on your phone that's free. And it's ironic because he's also a lifestyle medicine doctor. And so he's fabulous. He's done a lot of neat books and recipes and stuff like that out there. He does a lot of different podcasts, but he has this free app that has a checklist pretty much everything I just recommended to you. So you can put that app on your phone as you get started and try to get that checklist each day. With alcohol, we know avoiding alcohol for prevention is the best thing to do because we know that alcohol is a carcinogen. When it comes to breast cancer, we know that alcohol increases the risk of breast cancer recurrence. It doesn't seem to impact mortality on the studies that are available today, but we don't want your breast cancer coming back earlier if we can avoid it. So I like for my patients to try to avoid alcohol. And if you drink alcohol, making sure you never have more than one standard drink a day. And that standard drink would be in this first slide. I kind of just buzzed right through for time purposes, but think of 5 ounces of wine or 12 ounces of beer or 1.5 ounces of hard liquor mixed drink, okay? The American Institute for Cancer Research says avoid supplements for cancer prevention. We talked about this. If anything, we see some supplements can actually increase the risk of certain cancers or mortality, as we talked about beta carotene with the green tea that it showed the increased in liver functions. And if you're currently undergoing cancer treatment, there's been studies with supplements that have actually showed decreased cancer outcomes or worse cancer outcomes in patients that took certain supplements both before and during their cancer treatment. So if you're on supplements, it's very important to talk to your medical team to find out which of those supplements during chemotherapy need to be held so they don't interact with your chemotherapy. Vitamin D for cancer survivors may actually improve overall survival after a cancer diagnosis. So this is a unique benefit of vitamin D among cancer survivors. So I encourage my cancer survivors to talk with their doctor and have your vitamin D checked once or twice a year so we can make sure your vitamin D is trying to be at least about 55 seems to be the sweet spot, up to maybe 75 or 85 should be just safe and shouldn't cause any problems if it gets up to that range. But any higher could increase the risk of kidney stones or increase calcium levels. And if you're on a plant-only diet where you're doing no animal products at all, you do need B12. Some folks who are older than 65 may need B12, so that would be something to check in blood work. And then if you're on a plant-only diet, you want to work with a doctor who specializes in guiding patients on healthy, whole food, plant-only diets to make sure that things like iron and calcium and selenium and your EPA, DHA, and iodine levels are adequately being replenished by the foods that you're eating. If not, there may be a unique need for supplements in those plant-only people. And from there, I'm going to turn it over to Beth. Thank you. While Beth's getting started, I'll just share this slide with you. I wasn't sure she's going to start talking. So we know that in breast cancer survivors who meet the majority of these American Institute for Cancer Research recommendations, that these breast cancer survivors lived longer from a breast cancer specific standpoint, lived longer overall. And the most important part of this is they felt better. They had a higher quality of life. So I know you're going to enjoy what Beth's going to do because I made you sit for an hour. I'm so sorry. I talk way too much. It's my biggest weakness. I love to talk. Thank you, Beth. I'm going to zip my lips.
All right. I think I need Dana to change over the presenter mode, but and then I'll share my slides if you want to back off of the screen. And like Dawn said, I'll be really happy to be able to get you guys up and moving. So I'll share my screen with you. I have a background in working in exercise. I was a fitness instructor. I'm a certified group exercise instructor from the American College of Sports Medicine, and I am a certified cancer exercise trainer. So one of the first things I want to do with you guys is get you up and moving. We can't sit for an hour and then listen to all the slides that I'm going to share with you without me at least getting you guys up and moving first. So I will walk you guys through some exercises. These instructions are just designed for people who are already cleared to be physically active by their physician. So if you have any kind of physical limitations, I don't want you to be doing anything that's dangerous. If at any point you feel dizzy or unstable or physically uncomfortable, you should stop and consult with a physician. So don't do anything that is not safe for you. Let me go back. And I'm just going to stop my share for a second. So I want to start out, everyone just stand up, take a deep breath in, lift the arms up to shoulder level. I like to think of this almost like Frankenstein arms, reaching out in front, opening up the back of the shoulders and lowering it back down. Now lifting out to the sides, reaching out wide, see if you can touch the sides of your room and lowering back down. Now, if you have the range of motion, taking a deep breath in, reaching up for the sky, stretching out the shoulders away from the hips, getting nice and tall, and back down, and then out to the sides, lifting up overhead, opening up those shoulders, and breathing out as you bring the arms down. Take a few seconds for shoulder rolls. I love doing this when I've been sitting at my desk. Think about moving the shoulders in a full range of motion, bringing the shoulders all the way up towards your ears, towards the back, dropping them down low, and then back to the front. Reach them up towards your ears, towards the back of the room, dropping down low. And now let's reverse it. Dropping low, bringing them around. Now, as you move forward, try not to hunch. Try to stay tall. Again, bringing the shoulders around in a full circle. Now, one of my favorite exercises to do is Tabata. Tabata is a great style of exercise. It lets you fit a lot into a short amount of time. It's a 2-to-1 work to rest ratio. We're going to do a mini Tabata. So 20 seconds of an activity, 10 seconds of a rest. Just going to bring this down so you guys can see me a little bit better. So it may be helpful if you have a couch, a chair, a countertop nearby. I want to make sure that you guys are safe. The first move that I'm going to walk you through is a sit to stand. If you can sit and you can stand, you can do this exercise. Simply sitting back, making sure that you've got something for support if you have balance issues, and then standing up. The second exercise that we're going to do is a high knee. If you have balance problems, holding on to the edge of a chair or holding on to a countertop may be helpful. So let's get started. 20 seconds of our sit to stand, down and up. Now this may seem really easy. If you're like some of the patients that I treat in clinic, this might be a very simple exercise. You might want to challenge yourself by making it into a full squat. So you can take it all the way down and up if that's safe for you. Taking 10 seconds to reset, standing next to your chair, next to your couch for balance, lifting up, bringing the knee up and down. I like to use my hands kind of bent in that 90-degree angle to bring my knee all the way up to touch the knee to the hand. Now, if you do have those balance issues, you can just bring the knee up a little at a time while holding on. That way it's staying safe and avoiding falls. We're going to take our 10-second break. We're going to do this again. When we do these squats or these sit to stands, this is when the heart rate starts to come up. So we're going to make sure we go all the way down and then up. And again, for balance, you can hold the chair as you come up. Try to keep your shoulders up, chest is open. Breathing out as you stand, taking that inhale and exhale. For my folks doing the squats, sitting down and then up, down and then up. Coming back for our high knees again. So again, kind of the arms at that 90-degree angle. We can bring the knees up to touch and up to touch. So again, my fitness folks out there, the ones that are active, you can make this one a little bit more challenging by moving quickly, adding a hop side to side, or this can be a high knee run in place if you choose to do that. Taking your 10 seconds to reset. We're going to move to two different exercises. Everyone knows about jumping jacks, but I want to give you guys a safe way to do this. So we can go out to the side, just to the shoulder, stepping out to the side and bring it in. Out to the side and in, out to the side and in. Now, if you have good range of motion, this is an exercise that you can extend all the way up. When you bring the arm all the way up, that's going to start to get the heart rate up a little bit higher. There's our 20 seconds. Let's take a little break. The next part of this routine, I'm going to have you doing a counter push-up. Now, one way to do this is against a wall. So this is safe for my beginners to do that push-up just a couple of feet back from the wall. It may just be a foot or two away that you can go in and push out. If you've got a countertop nearby though, you can do that push-up off of the countertop. Taking a break to reset. Those 20 seconds go by fast, don't they? We're going to be back to our jumping jack. And again, modify to your level. This could be that controlled, slow movement here. We might be reaching big up overhead, moving a little bit more dynamically, adding the hop, or if it's something that you're capable of doing the full jumping jacks. And our 20 seconds are up. One more round of push-ups, back to the countertop or to the wall. If you're able to, feel free to do that push-up on the ground, either on your knees or the full push-up. Coming down and up, keeping the chest open, keeping the shoulders strong, looking forward, keeping the neck straight, breathing out as you push away, breathing in and out. And last one. Now, you'll notice we just did 4 different sets, 20 seconds on, 10-second recoveries. That was 4 minutes. That's the length of most commercial breaks. So this is a great way for you to start incorporating exercise into your daily routine without a big commitment. It doesn't involve going all the way to the gym. It's something that you can do at home. It's something that you can do with equipment that you already have on hand. I am going to share my screen back with you guys. So while you guys kind of recover, get some water, let your heart rate come back down, and I'll move back with the slides that I'm going to share with you. So breast cancer survivors are the biggest group of cancer survivors that we have in the United States. There are 3.8 million breast cancer survivors right now. And cancer survivors have a higher rate of developing disease compared to the rest of the population and big risk for cardiovascular disease. This is why I make a big deal about getting that heart rate up. Survivors also have twice the limitations that are going to affect their ability to function and remain independent as they get older. So we want to stay strong. We want to maintain our balance. We want to do things that keep us able to care for ourselves as we move forward. The treatments like surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, these are all things that contribute to hurting the body. So we need to rebuild it as we get through those treatments. So here's a big list. Here's all the different health changes that we can see as a result of our breast cancer treatment. Fatigue. So the cancer diagnosis itself, having some of those emotional changes, also the drugs that we use can affect your sleep. We know that some of the medicines we use by changing our hormones in the body can definitely affect sleep. The hormone changes that also affect hot flashes, our energy levels, cardiovascular changes. So certainly we see that with chemotherapy. We worry about the neuropathy and neurologic changes from chemotherapy. Body weight changes. So some of the changes that happen, losing lean muscle mass and seeing fat mass increase. So our bodies may change as a result of breast cancer treatment. Women are already kind of at a disadvantage. At the age of 35, we start going through changes in our body. We start to lose lean muscle mass at a rate of about 5% every 10 years. So these are things that are escalated or made even worse after we go through cancer treatments. So the aromatase inhibitors we know contribute to a loss of lean muscle mass, and chemotherapy can contribute another 5 to 10% of lean muscle mass loss as well. Bone health decline. So certainly chemotherapies, also the aromatase inhibitors that we use for treating breast cancer can affect bone health. Immune function, big hot topic, especially with the pandemic. We're learning about how our immune systems are affected by the treatments that we have. Lymphedema, that can certainly affect our ability to stay healthy and stay active. Skin changes, joint and muscle pain, memory changes, the depression, anxiety, other new health problems. Some of those health changes from cancer treatment is even the risk of developing other cancers, weakness and debilitation. So the good thing is that there's a lot of data and a lot of great information to show us how to fix this or how to prevent it from getting worse. So a lot of these studies are ones that Dr. Musalem has already mentioned and already talked to you about, but not only did it talk about nutrition and how we can fuel our bodies, also looked at how exercise plays a role in our care as part of cancer survival. Nurses' Health Study shows moderate intensity exercise for 3 to 4 hours a week lowers the risk for breast cancer 50%, for recurrence of breast cancer 50%, as well as death and death from any cause. The Collaborative Women's Longevity Study shows moderate physical exercise, several hours a week, 50% lower risk for death, either from breast cancer or other causes. The Healthy Eating, Activity, and Lifestyle Study showed that increased physical activity after a breast cancer diagnosis is associated with a 45% lower risk of death. And we also know that walking 30 minutes a day, 6 days a week, consuming those fruits and vegetables in a healthy diet has a 50% survival advantage compared to women who don't have those healthy habits. So you'll notice that a lot of these studies are talking about preventing breast cancer recurrence or breast cancer specific issues, but it's also saying from all causes. So we know that exercise combined with that healthy nutrition, it's going to help us with heart health, with bone health, and preventing other types of cancer as well. So here's just some of the benefits that we know come with exercise for our cancer survivors. Oops, sorry about that. This is where I'm not as technologically advanced either. Got to try to find there we go. So reducing anxiety and depression. Have you ever heard of runner's high? So I'm a marathon runner, and what got me hooked on endurance sports is that in feeling with the endorphins and dopamine and all these great neurochemicals that happen with exercise, this contributes to that enhanced feeling of well-being and reducing anxiety and depression. I think everybody knows at this point the cardiovascular benefits to exercise. There's a lot of data. Your primary care doctors, your cardiologists are all going to be implementing some sort of recommendation for exercise. Exercise can actually reduce inflammation in the body, improve sleep quality, helps us with fatigue, which seems a little opposite of what you would expect. But once you start an exercise program, we know that can actually increase energy levels and decrease fatigue. We certainly know it can increase muscle mass. So a lot of times when I'm talking to my patients and they're asking about weight gain that they've had with their treatments or with their cancer diagnosis, like Dawn said, most of it's going to be nutrition related, but we can't forget the fact that we need to rebuild that muscle mass. We need to pay attention to building that lean muscle mass in the body. There's also been some small studies that show that exercise can improve sexual function and sexual health, which is something that a lot of our patients will struggle with. A lot of the other things that we mentioned before, the musculoskeletal symptoms, the stronger bones, the effects with the hormones and growth factors for cancer, reducing our falls to keep us from becoming debilitated. So a lot of great benefits for exercise in our breast cancer survivors. Now, this is one that patients talk to me a lot about, is the trouble they have with their medications. More than 70% of breast cancers are hormone receptor positive. So we're using tamoxifen and we're using the aromatase inhibitors like letrozole, anastrozole, exemestane to treat these cancers. But a lot of women aren't able to tolerate these because of side effects. So about 20% of women who are prescribed these endocrine therapies either don't start taking them or they stop taking it early, knowing that the standard is our 5 years of treatment because of the side effects. And postmenopausal women who stop taking their hormone therapy early or can't stick with the prescribed plan are more likely to have their breast cancer recur than women who take it as prescribed. So some of these side effects that women experience with these medications are hot flashes, fatigue, joint and muscle pain, insomnia, mood changes, loss of bone density. These all sound really familiar, right? These are the same things that I listed earlier, just as part of that cancer diagnosis. Well, exercise has actually been shown to help with these things. So we've got a lot of different studies that have looked at exercise as an intervention to help patients with tolerating these treatments. So one of the first things that I'll start patients on if they're having a difficult time tolerating their medications is I'll tell them to start moving more, to start incorporating some sort of exercise plan. You'll notice if you're on those aromatase inhibitors, if you sit for long periods of time, you get very stiff. Your joints start to feel hard. When you get up in the morning, you have to start moving your hands, moving your legs, getting everything warmed up just to get out of bed. Moving throughout the day can help to keep your body ready, keep your body moving, help to keep everything from getting stiff. I work with a physician in our physical medicine and rehab department, and he has a saying that I absolutely love. Motion is lotion. So by staying active, by exercising, we can reduce the side effects of these medications. even though some of these studies are a little bit older, the dates on these 2013, 2014, there's new studies still being published that look at the effects of exercise on aromatase inhibitors. There was a few studies even late last year that were published. So I try to keep up and read those. A lot of data that just keeps reinforcing the same thing. So kind of like how Dawn was saying, you get that food is medicine, that our food can be our medicine. I'm going to also add that exercise is medicine. So I'm going to give everybody a prescription for exercise. This is something that doesn't require swallowing a pill. It doesn't require going out and buying special equipment, but just saying that we want to move more, we want to stay active, and that's part of our treatment and part of our prevention for recurrence of cancer. So all that exercise is it's movement with a plan. So by moving more, we're already on the road to having that exercise. Guidelines for cancer survivors were first added by the American Cancer Society in 2003, and it wasn't until 2018 that they added strength training as a guideline. I think that's kind of sad because I've worked in cancer care longer than that, and I've seen this evolution. We used to tell cancer survivors to rest. We tell people when they were on treatment, when they just got diagnosed, that they need to save their energy and not do too much. So now we've really changed course, and we're kind of going the opposite direction, and we're pushing our patients towards being active. We start defining survivorship as any time since your diagnosis. So it doesn't matter what stage of disease that you have, it doesn't matter what stage of your treatment that you're on, whether you're on chemotherapy, whether you're taking endocrine therapy, exercise is safe and possible during and after cancer treatment. Patients don't need to wait until after chemotherapy to start doing some kind of activity. I actually argue that it's beneficial to get started as soon as possible. So the US Department of Health and Human Services has some very basic guidelines for the general population: 150 minutes of moderate or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity exercise each week in increments of 10 minutes or more. And we see additional benefits up to 5 hours a week of moderate, 2.5 hours of vigorous. And then strength training, 2 days a week or more. It's safe for almost everyone, but for folks that have chronic conditions, we may have to adjust that. And we want to make sure for older adults to include exercises to improve balance and reduce the risk for falls. So really kind of shifting that goal towards maintaining that mobility and independence. So before you start, check with your physicians to make sure that you have medical clearance, that there aren't any other conditions that would prevent you from being successful with your exercise journey. Make sure that you've had adequate time to heal. The American Cancer Society has kind of general guidelines on their website. You could always ask your surgeon for appropriate recommendations. Now, especially if you've had reconstruction surgery, making sure that you allow adequate time for everything to heal appropriately. I know some of our very fit, active women struggle with wanting to get back to their activity maybe a little bit too soon. So sometimes we do have to kind of back off and shift our focus more towards maintenance and less towards trying to build our level of tolerance for exercise. You may want to consider talking to your doctors about having a cardiovascular screening, see if there's tests that are appropriate for hypertension, heart disease, because some of the cardiotoxic treatments that we have, we want to make sure that your heart is healthy enough to withstand exercise. And then just like the recommendation I made earlier, don't exercise if you feel dizzy or feel unwell. Know your other risks. Know how your heart, lungs, and orthopedic restrictions might play a role in the types of exercise that you can do. So we want you to be physically active as your abilities and conditions allow during and after treatment. So you want to gradually regain fitness, and it may take 6 to 12 months. So try not to rush yourself to get back to it. Think of during treatment as a time to reduce, and then after treatment as a time to rebuild. I think it's a great opportunity to maybe explore different types of exercise. If you were a runner, looking at power walking as an alternative, or maybe exploring maybe indoor cycling, trying to find new things that you enjoy. Think about doing a professional evaluation if you have pain or limits to range of motion. That's where our physical therapy colleagues, occupational therapists, they can offer some advice and maybe some proper training to get you in safe fitness. Avoid inactivity. Just something as little as moving more and sitting less. There's the cardio study, which has been in the Journal of the American Medical Association, has shown that even just 7,000 steps per day can lower the risk of premature death 55 to 70%. So I know that a lot of times our fitness tracking devices are pushing for 10,000 steps a day, but even 7,000 steps a day, it contributes and reduces risk. So, if you're not to a point where you're getting even 5,000 steps, start with making small goals. If you're mostly sedentary, just try to stand more. Like I said, use those commercial breaks to get up and to move. Start with small goals and then build on that. And then don't be afraid to modify exercises based on your treatments and based on your symptoms. So an exercise plan for survivors starts with setting a goal. So some of the goals you might consider would be to cope with side effects, to improve endurance, to build strength or improve balance. There's different types of exercise that we use to do these things. You want to have a plan. I think it helps. Put the plan in writing. Tell friends, tell family members. Use some sort of tracking device, a log or a journal. Even the phones now, the Apple iPhones will track steps if you keep that in your pocket. So you don't even have to go out and buy a separate device. But there's lots of great resources out there. I think the biggest part of starting an exercise plan really is just by showing up. If you put on your workout clothes and you drive to the gym, by the time you get there, you're more likely to go in. Or if you have a treadmill at home, start by clearing it off. Put on your workout shoes, stand on that treadmill. Once you get started, you're more likely to keep going. So maybe start with that goal of just to show up, to start the exercise and see where it takes you. So aerobic exercise, I think most people know what aerobic exercise is. So it's going to be anything that gets the heart rate up. And it's going to be in a sustained kind of a way, walking, jogging, hiking, cardio, kickboxing, stationary bike, whatever is fun for you. There's so many options. Gyms nowadays have a lot of different things. The pandemic taught us that we can do things at home. A lot of people have started using those indoor bikes and treadmills like the Pelotons. So it's now accessible to a lot of people without even having to leave their house. So if you don't like don't like the idea of being out with other people, these are things that you can do close to home. I showed you some things that you can do, body weight exercises to get the heart rate up so it doesn't have to involve a lot of fancy equipment. During your treatment, think about reducing by about 50%, shorten those sessions. If you are someone that can run 10 miles on the weekend easily, you may want to scale that back. 4 or 5 miles, maybe power walk instead of running or jogging, and see how you tolerate it. And then after treatment, we want to gradually rebuild about 10% every 2 weeks. That's kind of a good rule of thumb, no matter where you're at in your fitness journey, is you want to slowly rebuild to avoid injuries. When we talk about intensity goals, again, kind of echoing those recommendations from the US government, moderate intensity would be 150 minutes a week, maybe over 2 to 5 days, with 20 to 60 minutes for each session. Now, if you're going to do your vigorous intensity, you can actually half that. You get more for your money, 75 minutes a week, 2 to 3 days a week, 10 to 30 minutes each session. A good way to figure out if you're doing moderate intensity or vigorous intensity exercise without relying on one of those fancy heart rate monitors would be a talk test. So conversation pace is going to be kind of our moderate intensity. You can talk, but you couldn't sing. So when I was doing the sit to stand, I can talk. I certainly couldn't have sang you a verse from my favorite song. When we talk about a scale of 1 to 10, that's going to be about a 5 on a scale of 1 to 10. And if you do like using the heart rate monitors and you feel comfortable with that, that's going to be about 50 to 75% of your max heart rate. For vigorous intensity, you're going to speak a few words, not full sentences. I was kind of getting there with the jumping jacks. So that's going to be the more vigorous type of intensity. You're 7 out of 10 and about 80% or more of your max heart rate. Strength training, I think, gets overlooked a lot. I think a lot of folks focus all their time and their attention on doing their cardio. They get on a machine, they kind of set it and forget it. I really want to stress the importance of strength training for breast cancer survivors, for everybody. So keeping and maintaining muscular strength is so important. Try to do 2 to 3 sessions a week. We want 48 hours of recovery for a body group. So some people may include some kind of strength training each day, but we want to make sure that whatever body area you're working has time to recover before you stress it again. Kind of a general rule of thumb, if you're doing a 20 to 30 minute session for strength training, try to hit 5 muscle groups. Write them down. Keep that journal. So maybe you do chest and back, arms, shoulders. 1 to 3 sets, 8 to 15 reps. So your reps are going to be the number of times you complete the exercise, and your sets are going to be the number of times that you do those reps. You want to start with the lowest weight available. That might be a 1-pound dumbbell. On the machines, set that pin to the lowest weight plate that's there, and then gradually increase over time to avoid injury. So start with 6 to 8 weeks, and if you're doing it 2 to 3 times a week, give yourself time to practice good form. If you're working with a trainer, this is time to build that muscle memory. Increase in the smallest increments possible, and do that after 2 to 4 tolerated sessions. So it's going to be only ever on a week-by-week basis. If you're increasing your weight within 1 week, it's a little too soon to allow your body to adapt. So when you're doing the machines, move the pin up 1 weight plate at a time. With the dumbbells, move up to the next highest set. If you go from the 1-pound dumbbells, that might be to the 2 pounds. If you're going from the 3s, it might be to the 5. Try not to skip up too much at a time. If you have to take a significant break, you want to back up by 2 weeks. So if you go on vacation, and I love vacations, but I know not everybody has time to do strength training while they're on vacation. Sometimes it's hard to find a gym. So when you get back, you want to back up by 2 weeks and then start to build back up again. I love the idea of using machines to encourage good form, because it allows us to keep our form as we work towards muscle fatigue. And keep in mind that we're working for fatigue, not pain. If something is painful, we want to try to back off from that. Get it evaluated, find out if there's something wrong with the joint or the muscle, if there's an injury that's there. Additional bonus work, and this is what I want to challenge. I don't think that this is just for older adults. I think this is something that everybody should do. Flexibility training and balance training. So ways that you can incorporate this would be with Tai Chi and yoga. I think those are a lot of fun. Now there's more places that are offering classes for this. There's videos, YouTube videos. I know the different apps like Apple Fitness and Peloton, they have yoga videos. Find things that are fun and maybe partner up with people to stay accountable with it. So here's kind of a sample routine for someone who's just getting started. We kind of start from 10-minute things. You should be able to do something for 10 minutes. So, on Monday, maybe go for a walk. On Tuesday, maybe some of those counter push-ups and things like that. Alternating so that you have time for your body to recover in between, and try to plan at least 1 day a week where you recover and 1 day a week where you're doing something fun. Do something that's play to you so it doesn't feel like work. Make sure that you include a warm-up. I think easy walking or marching in place is a great way to warm up before you do any kind of exercise. Dynamic stretching. So those are going to be those stretches like when we're reaching up overhead or when we're doing the shoulder rolls. We want to do that at the beginning of our workout. We want to have a 5-minute cool down to bring the heart rate back down. And then any static stretching, which are the stretches that you hold, those are you're going to do after the end of your workout. A nice beginner schedule would be kind of working up, and this is going to get closer to where those goals are at. So aerobic exercise for 15 to 20 minutes, doing your resistance training with different body areas, incorporating those sets and reps into it. So kind of being a little bit more specific to the body areas. Still having some stretching or balance work, and still trying to find a day that you're going to have fun with it. Every workout, I think especially as we get older, when I was in my 20s, I remember I'd walk out the front door and just start running, and I didn't think that I needed to do a warm up, and I've learned and I've paid the price for it. That's a recipe for injuries. Make sure you get a proper warm up, make sure you're doing those stretching. And then a good maintenance schedule, once you've gotten to a place where you're comfortable, would be making sure that you get the aerobic exercise and then stacking onto it by doing either the yoga, the Tai Chi, the stretching, but still making sure that you have fun. I think it's just so important to find activities that you enjoy, continue to explore. I think it's important to try new things. I think we evolve with what we enjoy. And so you may enjoy running one year and that may become boring. Try ballroom dancing, try Zumba classes, try cardio kickboxing. There's a lot of different options out there as far as what's available. So Dawn talked a little bit about SMART goals. So setting that SMART goal, one idea would be I will reduce my sit time by standing for 1 minute every hour, Monday through Friday for the next 8 weeks starting today. This is actually very close to the goal that I have. I actually converted my desk at work into one that I can stand at. So I'm trying to stand more each hour while I'm at work. It is hard, but some of the fitness devices will give you a warning or remind you, but I think it's as easy as just looking at the clock too, trying to stand a little bit more when you can. Another one, maybe I'll increase my physical activity by walking after dinner for 15 minutes, 3 times a week for the next 4 weeks. So set something that's very specific, something that's attainable, be able to keep track of it. And when you meet that goal, move on to the next one. So a couple of safety considerations: make sure that your setting is safe and comfortable, your equipment in good condition, start low impact, walking, swimming, things like that, before moving on to running or kickboxing. Clean your equipment before you use it. Never trust the people before you at the gym. Wash your hands often. Wear appropriate clothing so that you have good range of motion. Get a workout buddy or a trainer, not only because it's fun, not only because they'll challenge you, but also because it's safe. If something were to happen, you have someone that can call for help. Make sure you take frequent breaks. If you're outdoors, wear sun protection. This is so important. We're in Florida. I don't know what areas you guys live in. We get a lot of patients with skin cancers from enjoying the outdoors. So wear hats, wear sun protection, or go early in the day before the sun gets too bright. Stop and talk to your doctor if you feel weakness, develop falling, develop headaches, dizziness, vision changes, new or worsening pain, and try to avoid overtraining. I know some of my patients, they're very aggressive at trying to get back to their workout routine, but when we do too much, it can actually cause some harm to our immune system, and it can lead to injury. So we don't want things to get worse. We only want to get better over time. A couple of special situations. These are things that I think breast cancer patients need to know about and be aware of, because they are at a higher risk for this than the general population. So lymphedema, that's accumulation of fluid because of damage to the lymphatic system. It can cause scar tissue, infection, and fat deposits. The main symptom is going to be swelling on the side of your surgery or radiation. A lot of patients will kind of notice it as their shirt sleeve fits tighter, their rings fit tighter, or their watch fits tighter on one side. Risk factors for this are increased body weight, higher body mass, and injury to the arm on the surgical side. It can happen at any time. We commonly see this in the first 18 months following treatment, and it worsens without proper care. Unfortunately, lymphedema is not curable, but it is treatable, and treatment can involve compression garments, manual drainage, physical therapy. There's even some surgeries that they can do with the lymphatics. So there are treatments for it. So it's something that if it happens, or if you're concerned about it, you need to speak up and let your surgery team know, or let your oncologist know. So at Mayo Clinic, one of our surgeons, Dr. McLaughlin, has been very involved in doing research with lymphedema. So fortunately, with using the sentinel lymph node biopsies, we've seen a reduction in the development of lymphedema for patients compared to the axillary lymph node dissections. And interestingly, in women who report swelling, only about 41% actually had measured lymphedema. So that's why it's important to bring this to the attention of your medical team, is to find out if this is maybe just changes in your body versus is this true lymphedema. And again, the risk factors: increased body weight, higher body mass, injury to the arm. So with lymphedema, a big study or a popular study, well, it wasn't a big study, it was actually a small study, but kind of a popular study in exercise science when it comes to cancer care was the physical activity and lymphedema study, because we used to tell any patient with lymphedema never to do any kind of strength training or exercise. We were so worried that it would just make the problem worse. So we know, because of the work that Catherine Schmitz did, that we know that this is safe, and it's actually something that may be helpful for patients who have lymphedema. So I encourage you, if you have lymphedema, get clearance from your surgeon or your physical therapist. Know your restrictions. If it's recommended, use the compression sleeve. Start low and slow. Listen to the limb. Avoid prolonged gripping and squeezing. And this is kind of in general, I would tell all breast cancer patients, and really anyone who's exercising, if you're gripping and squeezing really hard, then you don't have good control over whatever weight you're trying to manage. So, if you're rowing, if you're lifting weights, you really shouldn't be gripping and squeezing those very hard. You should have a firm hold on it, but you shouldn't be gripping so hard. Use caution when you're loading weights. Watch the arm and hand positioning. When we've already got a diagnosis of lymphedema, focus on the goal of rehabilitation rather than the goal of strength training or training. And then if you notice swelling or discomfort, talking with your surgeon or your physical therapist. These are resources that we'll make sure that we share with you. So some lymphedema resources, the American Cancer Society endorses these folks. So if you think that you have lymphedema, or if you already have lymphedema and need someone to work with you, I know Mayo Clinic does have access to physical therapists and occupational therapists. If you're outside of the Mayo Clinic network, or if you're not close to one of those hospitals, please reach out, look for someone in your area that can help you with rehabilitation. Osteopenia, osteoporosis, big thing that we see, not only because a lot of breast cancer survivors are postmenopausal women who are already at risk for bone density loss, but because the drugs that we use can also make these conditions worse. So chemotherapy, the aromatase inhibitors can worsen osteopenia and osteoporosis. So if you already have low bone density, we want to include weight-bearing exercise. We just want to avoid the highly dynamic exercises that could be harmful. So walking, dancing, Tai Chi, these are all great ways to be on our feet. Balance your program with the strength training and aerobic exercise, and make sure that you're using good form. So we want to avoid the high impact, like jumping rope. We want to avoid extreme motions because we don't want to cause something to twist in a way where we could get a fracture. And we want to avoid falls. So things like skiing, ice skating, these high risk activities might not be a good fit if you do have some weakening of your bones already. Neuropathy is another one that a lot of patients will develop after chemotherapy. So you have to be very careful to make sure that you have good balance. Wear good shoes. Check your shoes before you put them on to make sure there's not like a stone or a pebble in there. Use fall precautions. Do seated exercises when you can. Use the handrails on the machines. Check your skin for damage. So if you're lifting weights, making sure that you're not getting blisters or damage on the skin that's there. And I think most importantly, when you're able to work with a trainer who knows how to give proper counseling to cancer survivors. So you can find certified trainers through the YMCA program, Live Strong. I know here in our area, I'm in Jacksonville, Florida. The YMCA of Northeast Florida has the Live Strong program at some select locations. The American College of Sports Medicine has the Moving Through Cancer recommendations, and they offer that certification that I have, the cancer exercise trainers. That is, I will say, a very difficult certification. It requires an in-depth knowledge of cancer care, not just breast cancer, but cancer care and the different treatments. You know, it requires you to know everything from what happens at diagnosis through treatment and then in survivorship. There's an excellent CD that's out called Strength and Courage. I actually downloaded it, and I think it's a really neat way for women at all stages of their diagnosis to start incorporating exercise back into their routine. And then a cool resource for folks that have access to it is the Silver Sneakers program. I'm familiar with it because I used to teach classes at the YMCA, and we had Silver Sneakers there at the YMCA. But Silver Sneakers is a program that is at different gyms throughout the entire country. They even have now online classes. And on their website, it said that there are certain Medicare plans that offer access to these classes for free. So that might be something that you want to look into. It's designed to be exercises kind of geared towards a safer way of implementing them and then building on that. So it is kind of geared towards an older population. Thank you so much for your time and attention. I hope you guys enjoyed or learned something new. And if you have any questions, you can definitely put those into the Q&A. I'm going to turn things over to Dana, and she's going to take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Beth. Let's see. Okay. Hopefully I'm sharing my slides. All right, well, hello again. I just want to spend a few minutes with you chatting about mindfulness. I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel like my head's on Wall Street. I'm all over the place. My thoughts are going a mile a minute. That causes difficulty keeping my thoughts in order. And then I have difficulty being present in the actual moment and focusing on what I'm doing instead of having my mind just wander and thinking about what else I need to do. In fact, almost half of our waking hours are spent just like this. You know, we're thinking about the bills we need to pay, or that conversation we were supposed to have, or doing the laundry or groceries. But then you add cancer on top of that, and it just gets ever so hard. But the goal is this: it's to clear our minds. It's to have peaceful, kind thoughts in our mind. And You might be thinking, oh, it's easier said than done. And I totally get that. You're right, it is, but it is possible, I promise. It takes some time, some intentionality and practice, but it's possible and it's so worth it. So this is a really great resource, the book by Dr. Amit Sood. It's called Mayo Clinic's Guide to Stress-Free Living. And it's just a great resource really to help you along your journey of living a mindful life with peaceful and kind thoughts. So you can get the book online on Amazon, and it goes over some really easy ways that you can apply some of these concepts of mindfulness. And one that he talks about is joyful attention. He talks about having a morning gratitude. So it's, an attitude of gratitude first thing in the morning when you get up, give thanks to something that you're appreciative of, or maybe have like a little gratitude journal that you keep next to your bed. Thinking of something that you're thankful that you have in your life, or maybe even a different person each morning that you care deeply about and that you're grateful to have them in your life and the reasons why. You're more likely really to think positively when you choose your thoughts, and that practice each morning can really set the foundation for the rest of your day. Another thing he talks about with joyful attention is just noticing things. I think being out, going outside and being in nature is really great for this. Like really kind of noticing, maybe when you're walking in your neighborhood, some of the same houses that you see every day. Try to look at something different. Look at the landscaping, different flowers that they might have planted. Right now, I guess in some places you might be it might be a little too cold to be outside, or seeing a lot of snow, but there's a lot of beauty outside and a lot of opportunity for us to just take our minds off of ourselves and off of our situations and what's going on and kind of focus on something else. Kind attention is another thing that he talks about in his book. And that could be, you're in the middle of the day, you're at work, you're just completely overwhelmed, your emails are piling up, you have a deadline to meet that you don't know that you're going to meet it. Maybe at that time, just hit the pause button for a moment and send a silent wish of kindness to someone. You can inhale gratitude for that person and then exhale and send them a well wish or a prayer just of protection. And I think that kind of goes along the same lines of taking your attention, off of yourself, and the demands of life can really do more good for you than you might think. And another practice that Dr. Sood talks about is intentional thinking. And he talks about giving each day a thought of a higher principle and intentionally applying that into your day. So for example, today's Tuesday, and the principle is compassion. And that's really a recognition that we all experience some kind of suffering. We're all fighting a battle, or whether it be large or small, and we could just use a kind shoulder to lean on. So compassion, it recognizes that suffering, it empathizes with it, and takes action to comfort and heal. So maybe think about someone in your life who you could extend a little compassion to today. Maybe that's your spouse or your coworker, or maybe even yourself. I think you can find creative ways to incorporate these practices into routine, these principles into routine practice, including your self-care. Okay. So we've been covering a lot of information this afternoon, and some pretty heavy content, but it's important content to get out. And we really want to make sure that we balance all of that knowledge of nutrition and exercise with the fundamental critical importance of how we manage our mental well-being. Taking time for yourself every day, it's just really what's important. So for the next 3 minutes, I want to invite you to remove any distractions where you are. Get comfortable. If you're sitting down, maybe shut your eyes if you'd like, and just enjoy this guided meditation.
Begin this meditation by noticing the posture that you're in. You may be standing or sitting or lying down. Notice your body exactly as it is, and see if you can tune into any sensations that are present to you in your body in this moment. There might be heaviness or lightness, pressure, weight. There might be vibration, pulsating, movement, warmth, coolness. These sensations can be anywhere in your body, and all you have to do is notice them. Notice what's happening with curiosity and interest. Take a breath. As you breathe, relax. Not much to do except to be fully present and aware. Now let go of the body's sensations and turn your attention to the sounds inside or outside the room. There may be all sorts of sounds happening, loud sounds, quiet sounds. You can also notice the silence between the sounds. But the sounds are coming and going. Notice them coming and going. One tendency of our mind is to want to think about the sounds, to start to make up a story about the sound, or we have a reaction to it. I like it, I don't like it. See if instead you can simply listen to the sound. Notice it with curiosity and interest. The sounds are coming and going. Now once again, notice your body standing, present, or seated, or lying down. Notice any body sensations that are obvious to you. Take another breath, soften, and when you're ready, you can open your eyes.
All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. It's always nice just to have a moment to give back to ourselves for a little relaxation. That's only 3 minutes, but I hopefully after resetting, just for even 3 minutes, you feel maybe a little rejuvenated. Maybe your focus or your clarity is a little better. And that's something that you can easily do during the day, or even taking a 3-minute time out at work to reset your mind, or right before you go to bed. We'll include this link in the list of resources that we send out, just so you'll have that access to it. All
Begin.
right. So a lot of people say really that it's hard for them to clear their thoughts and make their minds go totally blank. I think what's important is not really focusing on the fact that your mind is wandering, but to recognize that and then bring your mind back to the present moment and focus on your breathing. So one way to try to help with that, to keep you in the present moment and really focus on your breathing, is yoga. I think actually even prayer is a form of meditation for folks too. Yoga, I remember Beth called it one time a meditation movement exercise. And the whole goal is to rest your mind, but still move it in a relaxing way. And there's been some nice breast cancer research that shows yoga among breast cancer patients has been very successful at reducing anxiety and mood disturbance and even depression. And it improves quality of life and energy. So there's less of that, post-treatment reported fatigue, and it's excellent for insomnia. So we recommend this to many of our patients, and there's a lot of available free resources online. You just search, do a Google search of restorative yoga, and you should be able to pull up some. Excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat. um, let's see. So another thing that I want to talk to you about is what's really important is living a purpose-filled life. I think sometimes it's hard to think about your purpose. We have so many things going on and we're so distracted by multiple tasks and just life in general. But I think once we've optimized many of these pillars of health and we're ready to accept a few additional challenges, I think what's really important is just for us to take a look at our purpose in life, our meaning in life, what gives us value. It's a time when you're able to acknowledge your diagnosis as a gift. That might sound weird for many folks of you that are still in the trenches of treatment, but I think as your treatment becomes something of the past, you're able to reframe your cancer diagnosis as something that gives you new purpose. Excuse me, I have a little bit of tickle. So really finding your purpose, that could be, volunteering at your child's school or a local nonprofit that you're passionate about, or maybe that's writing letters to folks that are currently undergoing cancer treatment, or even residents at a nursing home, just to offer them some words of encouragement or support. Really, no matter what it is, just think about what's special and important to you. Because it's so important to live a life worth living, embracing every moment that you have, and defining and finding your purpose is really what that's all about. So finding what's good in your life, what's left in your life to share with others, and that's where you'll find meaning and purpose in life. All right, so this is something interesting. Compared to women who are socially integrated, women who are socially isolated are more likely to have their breast cancer come back and more likely to die from any cause, or die from their breast cancer. I think the mere fact that you're all connected with us today means that you are one of these socially integrated individuals. And we're not meant to do life alone. We're created to be in community. So I encourage you to continue to stay socially integrated. There's a great study out of Harvard on adult development. They were following this group of over 700 men for over 80 years. It's still going on. They were asking them year after year about their work, their home lives, their health, really just to learn what makes a good life, and are now following some of the children of these men since most of the men have passed away. Excuse me. And the clearest message that they got from the study was that it didn't matter how successful you are in life or how much money or fame that you had. What they found repeated over and over again is that it's good relationships that keep us happier and healthier. It's not the number of relationships that you have, but the quality of those relationships. So they found that these good relationships, they protect our bodies and also our brains. They found that the people who were the happiest were the ones who actively worked to replace workmates with playmates. They worked to live, they didn't live to work. So I encourage you to stay socially integrated and not isolate, and lean into those relationships with family and friends within your community, and really spend intentional time strengthening and deepening those relationships. And one great resource, speaking of that, that we have available for you to allow you to stay socially integrated, is a wonderful virtual support group community. It's led by Liz Matson, who's part of our Humanities and Medicine division, and Kristen Lothman, who's our mindfulness expert here at Mayo, Florida. The support group's open to anyone who wants to attend. They meet via Zoom the first Tuesday of each month at 12 p.m. Eastern, and we'll include this information for the group and how to register in the list of resources that we send out. All right, so setting your SMART goal. Just one more small little home assignment for you. Here are a few examples that you're more than welcome to use as your goal. Maybe you'll embrace social connections and call a relative or friend that you haven't spoken to recently. Maybe you'll send a silent good wish to 3 people before driving home each night after work, or you'll do a 3 to 5 minute guided meditation every night before going to bed for the next 4 weeks. Pick something that speaks to you. Keep it specific and attainable, but also give yourself a little grace. Incorporating mindfulness into your daily lives, it takes time and intentionality. It's kind of like those exercises you get at PT. It's a little challenging at first, but then the more you do it, the easier and more natural it becomes, and then the better you start to feel. All right. With that, I think I will turn it back over to Dr. Musalem.
There we go. I had to find my toolbar that would allow me to fix everything. So, okay, gosh, this has been so informative. Thank you for both of those exercises, moving our body and then relaxing our mind. What a great balance. I'm going to kind of dive back in. Man, you guys get the fun stuff. I'm giving them all the stressful stuff. So I'm happy you're a part of this. So the exercise, I tell my patients sometimes that it's kind of, if we go back to the caveman era, the saber-toothed tiger jumped out at the caveman. I'm the saber-toothed tiger, right? I'm coming at you with all this nutrition stuff. But if we think back to that time, the caveman would outrun the saber-toothed tiger. He used up all that stress and, with his exercise, and he wasn't all stressed out at the end of the day, but we still have that saber-toothed tiger. It's all of our other stressors. And Dana was talking about great ways to help that stress. And certainly what Beth talks about, that exercise, all of those are such wonderful ways to manage stress. I'm going to kind of dive into a few resources that we will be sharing with you, but I just want to give you a little insight to some of these resources. This particular slide is really exciting. So you'll have this link in the resources we mail out. Any of you who have had a history of breast cancer, who are 50 years old or older, are eligible for this very exciting study that has to do with weight loss. So if you're overweight or if you're obese, please consider doing this study. I have several patients that have signed up and they've really enjoyed the resources that they're getting through this study. The exciting thing is that this study was originally designed to be done at certain locations, but because of COVID, we opened it up nationwide. And so it's available to all of you now. So please feel free to call. This is a US-based study. I do not know for our international patients if you would be eligible, but it doesn't hurt to call. So you will have the information for that. The American Institute for Cancer Research also has some really lovely free patient-guided resources for you as well. This particular one is kind of like setting up your own lifestyle plan that's individualized for you. So there's a pretty in-depth questionnaire they offer you that has to do with your nutrition, exercise, your social environment, what you do to relax, and your spirituality. So it's a real nice program called I Thrive. Also from the American Institute for Cancer Research, they have this healthy challenge with nutrition. I love challenges, especially as we go into the new year. So this would be one you can consider accepting. And it's really special because as a cancer survivor, you're surrounding yourself with a very highly respected, the leaders in lifestyle research when it comes to cancer. And so this would give you good quality evidence-based information as you work through this particular challenge. We'll give you that link. This is a new plant-based living series that was just released recently, and it's just now getting started through Dr. Michael Greger, who's also part of the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. He also does nutrition facts. A lot of my patients have read his book, How Not to Die, How Not to Diet. He's kind of funny. He's pretty, he can initiate a little bit of fear with some of what he talks about. He talks about a lot of research. Some of it may be animal-based research. Some of it may be more human research. So he really gets into the nitty-gritty. So I just like to put that little bit of a warning. If you're intense about wanting to learn exercise and move in that direction, this may be right for you. But if you're just getting started and you're not quite sure yet, I would probably gear you more in the direction of the American Institute for Cancer Research, which is a little bit more of a subtle approach to this. Dr. Greger is pretty intense, but fun and humorous. And some of my patients come to me already following him. So I like to share that resource as well. Here is one through Dr. Andrew Weil. That's an app you can put on your phone. That's like having your own personal wellness coach. That is a really cool app. I have it on my phone, and every morning it kind of pops up and it tells me what I need to do. So I enjoy that. I've had a few patients use it and they've enjoyed that as well. And this book was just recently published into the new year by Dr. Dean Ornish, who is the father of lifestyle medicine, and his wife. This is just a beautiful book. I ordered this book as a holiday gift for several family members. I personally got the book as an audio because I love hearing him and his wife's voice as they read through the book, because they do it with such a meaning and compassion and love. So I think all of you would really enjoy this book. So hopefully you consider that. And it has to do with just improving how you live to reverse many chronic diseases, not just focused on cancer, but truthfully, the heart disease is the thing we as women who are on this call need to worry most about, and men as well. So this is a really nice book. Here is a lot of cookbooks. I always get the question, I didn't get it today, but a lot of people say, what cookbooks do you recommend? Here is a good snapshot of a lot of the cookbooks my patients use. I always recommend all of these cookbooks. The authors have sites on social media where you can get all these recipes for free, and it's constantly being updated. And then if you follow who these folks as authors follow on social media, you'll get even more good things. So you almost don't have to buy cookbooks nowadays, right? Everything is free. I don't know how these authors earn their money after all that hard work they put in these beautiful cookbooks. So I think with that, we'll turn to questions. There are definitely some good questions. I started answering a few of them just so that we could get to all of them, because I know we're starting, well, we actually are at 5 o'clock. So thank you for those of you who are going to still stay with us. I'm going to go through and answer these questions and then hand over a few of Beth's questions to her. So the first one was, what are processed meats? That is a great question. Let me pull these questions over here so I'm looking at you. So processed meats would be things like ham and sausage, hot dogs, pepperoni, beef jerky, deli meats like roast beef, turkey, ham. Well, I already said ham, but ham can be like a ham that you have at a holiday or a ham that you have it from the delicatessen. So those are your processed meats, the things you want to try to avoid. Isn't it interesting that those are the things we a lot of times put in a child's lunchbox? It's kind of concerning that we start these kids off with carcinogenic compounds in their lunchbox. And more concerningly, this is what school lunches give to the kids. So it's something we kind of want to consider. Do we know the benefits of liposomal vitamin C? So there is some research out there that does show that the liposomal vitamin C is a better absorption. It is more expensive, however. So it kind of just depends. You can buy a cheaper vitamin C version that's not going to have as much absorption and use more of it. In doing that, you may end up getting a little GI distress. The liposomal vitamin C will give you higher absorption, so you don't have to go as high of a dose. So hopefully that answers that person's question. Good question. So more coffee equals less breast cancer. So that is correct. That is what you heard. Again, please remember these are observational studies. I do feel in regards to that particular study, more research, is needed, but there has not been a study showing that coffee is risky for breast cancer. So since the study was just published a few months ago, it was all over the news. I thought it was worth mentioning because it was a high quality study with statistical significance. I had a very astute participant ask a question about the numbers I'm throwing out there regarding risk reduction. She asked, are those absolute or relative risks? So I have a feeling this individual is either a researcher, a nurse, a doctor, not sure, but it was a really, really good question. So the numbers we provide in terms of reduction in risk of recurrence or reduction in breast cancer specific mortality or improvements in survival, those particular numbers were delivered as relative risk. Those are how the studies are presented when they're published. And this is how we talk to groups, since we don't know an individual's own individual risk. I wouldn't be able to talk to a group and say, this is going to be what the absolute risk reduction is. Because we're talking to women with DCIS, we're talking to women who may have invasive breast cancer, it's ER/PR positive. We'll talk to some HER2 positive patients and some triple negative patients, and there may be some women that have advanced disease as well. So that number would be wide ranging. I will share with you, every study I presented today was among early stage breast cancer patients with stages 1 to 3 cancer, unless I emphasize that it was specific DCIS or stage 4. And because we were running short on time and we're still going over, I pulled out those studies today. So all of the studies that I talked about today were stage 1 to 3 breast cancer. It doesn't mean it doesn't apply to the other cancers, but that's just a study cohort that it was done in. So 2 good questions there. With the coffee, yes, it seems like there is a link to some protection. There's been other, even with cognitive, and there's been other very favorable aspects when it comes to coffee that it seems to be somewhat protective in individuals. Now, it's what we call a J-shaped curve or a U-shaped curve, where if you get too much, you lose that benefit. Same thing with exercise. If you exercise too much, you start to lose a little bit of that benefit, right? So we know with coffee, probably 3 to 5 is as much as you need. Any more than that is the problem. Now, I am not certainly inviting you to start drinking coffee. The mention of coffee was simply to give you reassurance that if you're enjoying it or you used to enjoy it as your special morning ritual, there's no reason you need to stop it, because I'm all for advocating for rituals and things that are special in your life and meaningful. And sometimes that cup of joe in the morning is just a nice time with yourself and maybe the newspaper or yourself and a nice book, whatever it is you do with your cup of joe. I know I like my cup of coffee in the morning. So hopefully that answers 2 questions with 1. So this question, is oat milk a good alternative as well? Sure, any plant milk. I tend to like the ones in the refrigerator section a little bit more because there tends to be a little less preservatives in them. And I feel they taste a little bit better. It doesn't mean that you can't get the ones that are on the shelf. Quite honestly, there is a little bit more ingredients in the ones on the shelf, but there's not ingredients that are going to really harm you, with the exception of added oil. Again, I'm a big advocate that if we consume oil, it's a strict product. There's no nutritional value, and it's not going to really help you. I'm going to go ahead and take that right into another question that I guarantee is going to be written. What about olive oil? So a new study was just published. It showed olive oil is beneficial. That study looked at using olive oil to replace things like butter and unhealthy oils. So of course, olive oil is going to be healthy. But the big question is if we could do a study to compare olive oil to olives, which would win? And so my take on it is I would rather the patient have the whole food. One where when you get the olive, it's not stripped of just the oils, but you're getting the olive, plus you're getting fiber. I'm that fiber freak, right? So I want you getting the olive. It doesn't mean that you can't have olive oil. And in this particular study, it showed that a half a tablespoon of olive oil was just as beneficial as more. So again, calories and weight. We want to maintain weight. We don't want to gain weight. So I'm trying to balance all of this. If you eat olives, remember when we looked at that picture with the belly that was getting distended? If you eat olives, you're going to feel more full than if you eat a half a tablespoon of olive oil, and you'll get the same benefit. So I encourage the olives. more than olive oil. But it's not to say that olive oil is not good for you. There's certainly some health benefits of olive oil, as was just recently shown in the study, particularly when you're replacing bad fat like butter and other things that wouldn't be healthy in terms of those sorts of fats. So I went off on that. My reason for doing that is there are some plant milks that add oil. So don't get those. Okay, good. Are there any sugar-free or diet drinks that are acceptable? So take a look at the label. If the label has artificial sweeteners, I would really try to get rid of that. Remember that study that showed that the sodas consumed increased the risk of overall mortality and breast cancer mortality were the ones with sugar in it. When it comes to something bubbly that doesn't have calories, there are so many sparkling waters out there now that are really nice, very low calorie or 0 calorie, that have no added sugar or no added artificial sweeteners. So which artificial sweetener do I like the best? So I definitely don't like Splenda in the yellow. I definitely don't like Equal, the Acesulfame, and some other ones out there that you can hardly pronounce. All of those definitely have risk. We know that all artificial sweeteners probably disrupt the gut microbiome, and I'm saying all, including stevia. They probably disrupt the gut microbiome. So that would be another problem, right? But if I had to pick my favorite, I would pick stevia. The research for stevia seems to be pretty acceptable, and especially in the cancer population, it seems to be actually quite appreciable. With the exception, we don't quite know what stevia does to the gut microbiome. But if I have a patient eating a really healthy diet otherwise, I feel pretty forgiving of them using stevia. I would much rather than that of sugar. The truth is I'd rather my patient develop a palate that they don't need stevia, but that can be pretty tricky, especially as we're making these transitions and these steps towards healthier diets to get away from sugar. So I invite my patients to enjoy stevia. Please look for stevia leaf extract. That would be one that when you look at the label, you don't see all these added things in it. Sometimes some stevia has erythritol, or they have dextrose, so they have a whole bunch of other things added. So I would rather you just get plain stevia leaf extract. There's one brand I'll just throw out there to make life simple. It's called Sweet Leaf. You can find that pretty much at all grocery stores, and it frequently goes on sale. So you could try that one. Monk fruit, I think, is okay. Again, monk fruit. So since I'm talking a little bit fast, would be fine. And then if you wanted a more natural sweetener that will have calories, but it's relatively, it's a kind of neutral from a glycemic load. I like date syrup. Some, whole food plant-based recipes will use whole maple syrup in it, more natural based sugars like that. And I often get the question about honey. Again, it's going to be a little higher on the glycemic index. It's not really a plant product because it's from an animal. So there's some controversy around folks who are really animal based. But honey would be, has some nice immunologic properties, especially if you're sick or you have a cough. I think honey has its place in that situation if you're okay with doing animal products from honey, which I am. One participant asked if we could see the smoothie slide again. We're going to send that to all of you. And at the very end, I'll scroll back up to that so I can do this while I'm talking and answer the next question. I'm hearing from medical professionals and seeing studies how good avocados, nuts, and olive oil are. But then they hear about low fat from the medical team. I mean, that was a great question. That was like, I planted that question. Thank you. That is really, really good. That is really confusing, isn't it? So I guess as I'm scrolling, I'll stop off at that one slide. Let me do this. So I'm going to stop off at 2 slides. So the one is going to be this smoothie slide. So there's the smoothie slide. And please know I'm going to send that off to all of you. I know how small that probably looks on your screen. So you will be getting that emailed to you. And en route from that slide, we're going to go to this slide. And again, this is that calorie density, nutrient density. So when it comes to things like nuts and seeds, and let's just put olive oil in there, more of a healthier monounsaturated fat that we're going to add in there too, or maybe even a polyunsaturated fat if we're talking about things like omega-3 fatty acids, that would be an avocado. Okay, so here we go. These foods are still in the green. They're still very, very healthy for you, but you can't eat them in an unlimited manner because the calories will creep up on you. So keep that in mind. So when it comes to avocado, I wouldn't do 2 avocados every day. I would maybe consider a half of avocado or maybe 3 avocados a week, split up over the week's time. Avocados are hard because once you cut one, you're kind of fully committed. You kind of can't turn back, right? If you cut it in half, it's going to turn brown and then it's not going to be too good the next day. So If you do an avocado, you would want to be mindful of that. And it also depends on your weight goal. Are you trying to lose weight, maintain weight, or gain weight? Is part of the discussion. But these healthier fats that are from natural products, I would be okay with when it comes to avocado, but again, can't be unlimited. Same thing with nuts. We talked about the palm of the hand or 1 serving a day. Caution with nut butter, because nut butter, you're not chewing it. So psychologically, those calories go really, really quick. And we're talking like almost 200 calories in 2 tablespoons. And psychologically, you're not even really aware you're eating it. It doesn't mean you can't have it. It just means we need to be aware because it's a calorie dense, or it's a calorie dense, nutrient dense food. Okay, so because those calories are high, we have to be mindful. With the nut butters, again, read the label, make sure they're not adding oil. That's like crazy, right? The nut already has fat and then they add more oil. It just makes no sense. Sunflower butter is the one that I find traditionally never has added oil in it, and it's mixed up really nice. So I like the sunflower butter, just no added sugar. And again, just make sure the brand at your local grocery store doesn't have added oil in that either. I hope that answered your question. If that didn't, we're going to go on to a few other questions and you can ask and I can elaborate a little bit more on that, but hopefully that answers that question. And again, the reason when we're dieting is this. If you do the oils, your belly is not going to be distended as much with a lot of calories compared to if you do vegetables and fruits. You're going to be full, you're going to have satiety, and you're not going to feel that sense of deprivation. But you still can have a little bit of fat. Let's just not overdo it. What are healthy options for increasing calcium intake? So we have this nice slide here, and this will be in that handout as well with the calcium. Oops. So soybeans, tofu, the plant milk, so almond milk, soy milk, you typically have between 300 and 400 milligrams of calcium, which is fabulous. And here you have a slide that shows you a few other samples. You can always go into Google and put foods high in calcium. It'll give you a list. And the thing I like to do for patients, again, is do that food journal where you're writing down your foods. And let's say for breakfast, you have oatmeal with almond milk and some raisins. And you're going to search each of those items in Google. How much calcium is in raisins? How much calcium is in this? How much? Most food labels actually list calcium. So you may be able to luck out and just look there. Write it down. For lunch, you do the same thing. Dinner, you do the same thing. In your snacks, you do it. Add it up at the end of the day. Find out what your milligrams are. Let's say you got 700 milligrams. My goal for you is 1,200 milligrams a day. That's not my goal. That's what the recommended goal is. I shouldn't say my goal. That's the recommended goal. I'm not making this stuff up, guys, I promise. So 1,200 milligrams a day is what you want to get from your calcium in your diet. But it's pretty hard to do that for some folks, especially if you tend to be on these little bit more of limited diets where you're not getting dairy products too. So if you're not hitting that 1,200 goal, then take it in the form of a calcium supplement, okay? Okay. Oh, someone asked this question. What are my thoughts on dates and date sugar? This is fabulous. We used to say like a fun fact about us. And my fun fact used to be my favorite food was raisins. Well, it changed, Dana. You thought you were going to say that. I was gonna be like, it's actually not anymore. My favorite food is dates. They're so delicious. Dates are great, and date syrup I like. I'm sure the date sugar is probably similar, but it's a wonderful, wonderful way to sweeten food naturally when you're making these whole food plant-based. So applause to the person that wrote that question at 501. I think dates are great. Again, dates are pretty calorie dense, so be aware of that, but they're high in fiber too. So
I definitely think dates are like nature's candy. That's like I love them. I love them.
Aren't they good? Especially the big fat ones. There's this one brand, I'm not supposed to say brands. I already said one, I'm going to get in trouble. And it's in this turquoise little box. And if you open the box up, there's a 50-cent off coupon. So you end up getting it like really cheap the next time. Just look for that coupon on the back and side. But it's this beautiful turquoise box. And they're the best dates in the world. Yeah, dates. You'll
probably think I'm crazy. I put mine in the refrigerator. I like them a little bit cold. I don't know. It's like a thing.
You could put a walnut in it, or you can have dates with apples. I mean, there's just all kinds of deliciousness. So next question is, what about mushrooms, especially turkey tail capsules or fresh mushrooms like shiitake? I'm adding the slide. I should have done that. Mushrooms are like magic. I mean, mushrooms aren't even, they're their own like species, right? I mean, how cool is that? They have like a mind of their own. And when it comes to immune system, mushrooms have a lot of very immunologic properties. We don't totally understand mushrooms yet, but they are exciting. So definitely cook with them. Don't eat them raw. That can actually be a problem. And when it comes to turkey tail capsules, there is actually very beautiful quality of life data that's been done for a very long time in cancer patients that shows it's safe. You would want to talk with your oncologist to make sure it's okay. I do integrative medicine consults where I really dive into nutrition one-on-one. And for example, that one individual that wrote that really complex, nicely detailed question about the risks, relative versus absolute. For my folks that want to get into the nitty-gritty, I try to get into the nitty-gritty with them during that one-on-one consult a little bit more for those sorts of questions too. But the point of my one-on-one consults is to assess quality of life. And if someone's undergoing cancer treatment and their quality of life is dipping, I do use turkey tail. If someone comes to me and they really want to take turkey tail, I'm almost always giving them a green light on that. It can thin your blood. It has some antiplatelet properties. If someone has immunosuppressive, or if someone's immunosuppressed for a reason, let's say they have rheumatoid arthritis or they have celiac, or let's say they're a transplant patient, turkey tail would be one of the things we may want to not give them. So if someone, let me make that sound more clear. If someone has autoimmune disease where their immune system is already too active, we would not want to give them turkey tail to stimulate their immune system more because it may cause more of the problem they already have, one population. Now, if someone is on immunosuppressants because we need to limit their immune system for reasons like an organ transplant, which we see a lot of at Mayo Clinic, another reason that I wouldn't want to give turkey tail is because I don't want to stimulate their immune system to do something it shouldn't be doing. Okay. So it does need to be individualized. Remember, supplements aren't without harm, but the cancer data, if I'm just focused purely on cancer, looks really awesome. And folks tend to feel good on turkey tail, and it's great for the immune system. Gosh, we have a good audience. Oh, this person said she's not a lay person. I just read a lot about nutrition. I take statins and there's a lot of statistical game. Thumbs up. I mean, really good reading, because sometimes people really get confused in that data, but you really ironed it out. I mean, I wish you all could have seen her question. It was a beautifully written question. So applause to you. Congratulations. And I'm sorry you're on the statin. You know, you're going to love Dean Ornish's book. So I recommend you read it, and you can talk to your doctor. And if you don't like what your doctor is doing, you can always get a second opinion with a doctor who really focuses on lifestyle medicine, cardiology, or I'm happy to see you. There are some patients that do need statins, but there's also some patients that have intolerability for a reason to statins, and we kind of work through that. It's controversial on both ends. So there is some breast cancer data in statins that is very exciting when it comes to triple negative breast cancer. So even though I'm a natural based doctor and that's where I want to go, I really get excited when I see this triple negative data and the outcomes in triple negative breast cancer patients on statins. It doesn't seem the other cancers benefit, just the triple negatives. So I have used statins off label in that population, even myself. If someone has myopathies on statins, CoQ10, most patients know who are on statins, they do take that. And if someone's having a lot of struggle, you can always talk to your doctor about pharmacogenomic testing to make sure that your enzyme that your enzyme isn't the reason you're having intolerability to statin, if you are having intolerability to statin. So this one says, is fruit skin better? Yeah, it actually is. So I had to cut out slides and I still went over in time. So there was another observational study that was recently published. It showed apples may prevent breast cancer. Well, the reason is because of the skins, and the skins help to enhance the gut microbiome. So you're right. Anytime you can eat the skin, even if it's not a potato, try to get the skin, because that's where all the fiber is, an additional benefit and value. So really go after the skin when you can. Not an orange, not a banana. I mean, be reasonable. The skins that are intended for you to eat, of course. I need to be careful. Next thing I know, I get a call and someone's like, I ate banana skins. I'm like, you know, if you eat it or if it falls on the floor, you can slip on it. Banana skins are just bad altogether. So just be careful with banana skins. I believe butter is better for me than margarine. I like butter on my toast, especially. Right, I agree. Butter is better than margarine, but neither is going to be best when it comes to overall health, because we want to avoid fat, especially saturated fat. So it just depends on, you know, your individual situation and your desire to want to kind of move the needle in that direction. So but you have the understanding correctly. Margarine is extremely processed. Butter does have a lot of saturated fat in it though. In the lifestyle medicine arena, I'm board certified in lifestyle medicine. There's a few other colleagues I work with. There's one gentleman who worked at a Cleveland clinic. He actually likes butter for his patients. So, you know, it's like you kind of end up establishing a relationship with the doctor that teaches in a way that you also agree with. My issue is my population of patients are breast cancer patients. I have loads of data that shows me that saturated fat is not good following a breast cancer diagnosis, and butter has saturated fat. So that's my reason for saying, I just don't want the butter. I'd rather you use something alternate to that you would enjoy just as much. And so I typically transition patients over to something that has fat in it, because psychologically, you're going to be a lot more successful with that transition. So I generally do like an avocado that's mashed up, where they, put a little bit of lemon juice, maybe a little garlic, a little salt, put other herbs and spices in there, whatever you want to do, and then put that on that toast. It's really delicious. You can put some arugula on it, put some sunflower seeds on it. Done. Great. The other thing you do is some sunflower butter. And then with the sunflower butter, you can slice some apples up or put dates on it. You can put banana on it, whatever else you want to do. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do. That's where having those one-on-one consults is fun, because we can kind of work through and then figure out where the value of butter is and how motivated you are to make these transitions. Okay. So I love chickpea pasta. That's great. She came across a chickpea pizza crust. She says it's called, I'm allowed to say this because she said it, so thank you. It's called Bonza brand. What should I look for in the ingredients to see if there's a healthier brand or pasta? I think it's probably just fine to do the brand you're doing. You can look at the label, but I've never seen any of these pastas that are adding oils or sugars or much, except for chickpeas. It's typically just says chickpeas. I haven't seen the pizza crust. Was it good? It sounds like it. It sounds like she liked it. So that's kind of exciting. I know I've tried the cauliflower crust and I did not like it. I thought it was disgusting. So I'll have to check out this chickpea pasta or this chickpea crust. And what's so exciting when you get these chickpea pastas and these chickpea pizza crusts, there's tons of protein too. And remember, I still have this calcium slide look up. And if you look at the second line, 2 over, what does that say? Chickpeas. So you're probably getting a lot of calcium. So that's super exciting. Look at these questions. You guys are awesome. I love you. You have this time and energy. I love this stuff. This is so exciting. So I have read that the real problem with cancer and sugar, honey, and carbohydrates is a rise in blood sugar and insulin. Right. You're correct. If you have a balanced diet, but add 1 to 2 teaspoons of honey every day to your coffee, isn't that better than using sweetener, even stevia? Based on this recent Nurses Health study that talks about glycemic index, that's really hard to answer, because we do know that honey is going to blip up the blood sugar more than the stevia will. However, if I have a patient who really loves that honey, and I really feel there's medicinal values to honey, what I would recommend, anytime you're going to have something that we know is going to flip that sugar up, is maybe have 2 walnuts with it. Or if you're going to be using a little bit of soy milk in that coffee, there's going to be a little bit of fat in soy milk naturally. There just is fat in soy milk. So anytime you're having something that's a little bit higher in glycemic index, even if I have a date, or even if I have dried apricots, anytime I'm having more of a sugary sort of a content food, I always make sure I have a little bit of fat with it. So I'll eat just a few walnuts, maybe 1 or 2 walnuts, maybe just 1. You don't need a bunch, just a little bit to give you some fat to pull that glycemic index down. So you're right. The concern with honey, sugar, any of these things that make the glycemic load up a little bit higher, even than the date syrup, is the simple fact that we're driving insulin. But the biggest thing is it's adding calories and potential weight. And we don't want that weight gain following a cancer diagnosis. So I think 1 to 2 teaspoons is so minimal. I don't think that's going to hurt you. I think it's just fine. And I understand your controversy with stevia. And I share the same sentiments. I'm kind of stuck because I do work with a lot of patients who want something sweet. So in the transition, that's where I take them and eventually try to get them off of it altogether and just to appreciate the food. I can't answer this question for you. I'm sorry, but I would love to answer this question for you. So if you want to send this question back with your email, the question is, thoughts on NATO or horsetail for bone health? I just don't know. I will tell you what I do know. Based on the evidence-based recommendations when it comes to bone health, we want your calcium to be 1200. There really has never been any studies that show that taking 1200 milligrams of calcium in a supplement has ever prevented bone fractures, though, but we still know we really need people to make sure they get that amount of calcium. But that's the truth. When you take it as a supplement, we just don't see that it really adds to that outcome difference, but it helps to maintain the bone density where we feel that the patient needs to be. When it comes to D3 in bone health, that's very important. We talked about the fact from cancer survivorship standpoint, D3 levels in the bloodstream seem to be very important. It's really hard to throw out a level of D3 that a patient should take for bone health, but we know that 1,000 to 2,000 international units will never get someone toxic and is probably a pretty good place to start. I'd probably lean towards the 2,000. I typically always have my patients going higher once I get their blood tests back. My Florida patients are going to automatically be a little higher than my poor Rochester patients because you guys are stuck up there close to the North Pole, I'm pretty convinced. and you guys don't get a lot of sun. So it's going to depend on where you're at geographically as well as your skin color. So the darker your skin, the less vitamin D synthesis you have. Vitamin D isn't a vitamin, it's really a hormone. So it's a blood test we should check. It's not something we should just guess on. But the one medicine that has been shown to reduce fractures is K2. I was actually very surprised when I read this. And so that's why a lot of supplements actually do have K2 in it. There's a lot of folks that feel that if you eat enough green leafy vegetables, you get tons of vitamin K, you're going to get K2, but I'm not quite so sure. So I'm very supportive if my patients want to take a little bit of K2 in with their vitamin D, and most calcium vitamin D supplements are adding K2 nowadays. Oh, and our attendee said that chickpea crust is delicious. So we'll have to check that out. More to come. Please post a picture on my Instagram. I would like to see that. And she puts, here it is, Bonza pizza crust. And it's about $4.50 a crust. And she said it tastes much better and it's not mushy like that cauliflower pizza. So that is exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Coke. Did I understand that all diet sodas should be avoided? Well, all sodas should be avoided both with sugar and diet, because the diet are going to have those artificial sweeteners, right? But that study that showed the breast cancer risk was one with sugar in it. So the reason for avoiding diet sodas would be because of the artificial sweeteners, okay? I hope that makes sense. And those artificial sweeteners, some of them actually cause cancer. Many of them cause cancer, minus the stevia. So Beth, there is a question for you. If there's any more questions that need to come in, please feel free to ask them. And Beth, your question is, what is the proper exercise for ladies with knee or joint pain?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. I think a lot of people in our clinics do have, whether it's acute or chronic pain. I think the first and most appropriate way to answer that is to say, make sure it gets evaluated to see if it's an actual injury. Do keep in mind that breast cancer survivors, any kind of new pain for more than 2 weeks, we want to rule out fracture. We also want to be cognizant that there can be new cancer types, bone disease, things like that we need to evaluate for. So my rule of thumb for any kind of new pain is, if you have a new pain for more than 2 weeks, speak with either your primary care doctor or your oncology team to see if it needs to be evaluated. You could always consider meeting with an orthopedist or a physical therapist. Aside from that, if you just have chronic joint pain from arthritis that limits your movement, this is something you've had for a long time, it's not changing, but it limits you from being able to run and play tennis, start with movements that are more fluid. I love aqua aerobics and swimming. I think that is such a fun way, especially for folks in Florida. We have a lot of pools. I'm sure you guys have indoor pools up north. I don't know. I've never really lived up north. But aqua aerobics, some of the gyms even offer hydrotherapy pools that are a little bit warmer to make it more comfortable. A lot of these are in group settings. Water resistance is 7 times that as air. So it does offer some resistance as far as a benefit for strengthening the muscles of the body as well. So you may not get as much of what we think of as weight bearing as far as supporting your weight, but you do get that resistance to strengthen the muscles, which is an important part of keeping the body strong. Aside from that, I think cycling, indoor bikes, we were talking about this earlier. I am a triathlete and I don't think that cycling outside is really safe anymore. I do a lot of my cycling training indoors. So recumbent bikes are good for people who have back problems. There's plenty of different options as far as indoor bikes go. And then ellipticals are another way to have control over the resistance that you do without the impact to the joint itself. So those are all fun ways to kind of have as part of your routine, so you're not doing the same thing all the time. If it's something you're comfortable with and it doesn't make the pain worse, Tai Chi and yoga are also great for people who have arthritis. Remember that motion is lotion. So when you're moving in these slow, rhythmic, controlled ways, you're building strength. You're also able to help move the joints to lubricate them to get the synovial fluid to move. And that's going to make arthritic joints feel better over time.
Okay, great. I was able to look up that question on the NATO, and I have something really interesting about horsetails. So I'm going to share my screen with you because this is really cool. So whenever I do the integrative medicine consults and patients have supplement questions, I've been doing this long enough that most of the supplements that our breast cancer patients take are ones that a lot of your other folks, a lot of your friends who are going through this too are taking. So you threw out two that I haven't actually heard my patients take. So I go to this database, it's called Natural Medicine Database. I have access to it through Mayo Clinic. And so I put in the horsetail. And so we're able to go here to effectiveness and safety, but look at this. This is actually very concerning. So possibly unsafe because it can actually destroy thiamine and cause thiamine deficiency. So we want to be really careful. It's first do no harm. This is what I see often in some of these products. And then we come down to the effectiveness. So when it says insufficient evidence is reliable to rate, they can't even give me a rate with the osteoporosis. So, you know, when we know we have risk and there's not like really overwhelming data that says, yes, it's going to build bone, I would say I'm stepping back from that. It's not worth it. So if I come here, I looked up before this one, the NATO. And so, you know, NATO is a food, so it's not going to hurt you to do it. And it's a soy-based product. And so we know that soy helps to build bones. So I feel that the NATO would be just fine for you. But when we actually look at the studies to see about the bone density, it's interesting because it doesn't give me anything there. So I can't comment when it comes to bone, but I don't feel that it's going to hurt you if you did the NATO. Okay, but again, I don't have enough to say it's going to actually give you this benefit, but it looks like it's plenty safe. Of course, it's a food, so it should be safe. I'd rather you just use it as a food product more than using it as a supplement. So great question, and we all learned something because you asked that question. So thank you. And I also learned something about Instagram today, how to post a link from one of our participants who shared that with me too. So I especially thank you because I did not post the link properly. So now I will do that correctly in the future. Any other questions that we missed? Let me just scroll down and see if there's any down there at the bottom. Well, you guys are an awesome audience. Thank you so much. It'll take us a little, give us a day or two to get out those resources to you. And if you're interested in one-on-one consults, we'd love to see you. All my visits are virtually. So no matter where you're at, I see people from across the world. We love the visit. It's a 90-minute visit. So it's a long time we spend with each other. So make sure you can handle all this stuff I'm going to be throwing at you. I get so excited, but you already have the primer course, so we won't have to go in as much detail. But thank you so much. We really enjoyed it. Good luck. Yours in health. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.